Uh, and we're also going to be asking here a lot of questions about what is it, how is it being a first-term Congress to support for Newark Mayor Ras Baraka in the and we also have, we're getting ready to start. But I do any opening words for what's up with Zaid? I can't hear you. Your mute is on.
I'm steady talking and it's muted as all get out.
Okay.
I apologize. Welcome everyone to Today is an international day of solidarity with the Palestinian people, and there are mass actions all over the world taking place, including locally here in Jersey and in New York City. And it was only because we are on the air that I would not be in the streets in New York City right now. But so I just wanted to acknowledge that incredible day. And yesterday, of course, from an indigenous perspective, was a day of mourning. All due respect to the folks celebrating it as a holiday. So to our indigenous folks and our indigenous political prisoner, Leonard Peltier, in his 49th year in prison, we want to acknowledge him. Straight ahead.
All right, and thank you. And we have our first guest. We're to have our guest on. We loved having her on when she was a councilwoman from the Central Ward. And I always told her that we love the way that she talked about policy, the way she was a housing policy, any of those policies that would affect the Central Ward of Newark. She would talk about it in a way that made complex issues seem simple. And I am thrilled that she's able to take that skill set of being very steeped on policies that could benefit her community, our community, and take those things that seem very complex and break them down in ways that are simple. That's a talent. That's both a talent and a skill, and much respect as always. Welcome back to All Politics So Local. And I think as the first time since you were actually inaugurated
since you won
Congress, right? Like I think you've been back on since you were elected, but I don't think you've been back on since you have officially taken the reins as a congresswoman from the Congressional 10th. First, congratulations.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. And it's good had to find a place to get on because I'm always multitasking, but definitely wanted to take the time to get on and say hello to you all. So excuse the back, guys know I'm used to doing this. So it's good to be on. All Politics is Local. This is the first time I've been back since sworn into office. It feels like it's already been 10 years there already with all of the drama that is taking place, but definitely only been there for a couple of months now, and already knee deep in the work. So thanks for having me on tonight.
Well, thank you. Thank you again. What was it like when you first got sworn in? Like, I want to go into that first moment. What was it like for you? What were you thinking when you had the book in your hand and you were taking that oath?
Well, first of all, I was exhausted because we literally have been running this election, and kind of a special election is just nutty crazy. Honestly, we had a couple of weeks to run an election, win, and go through everything that went through with that election. So it was kind of like a surreal moment that we were finally at that point, but still thinking about the election ahead, because remember, we won the special election, got sworn, and then we had to, go into the November election as well. So, it was really just crazy thinking about getting sworn in, still another election ahead, but also to all of the work that lies ahead. Like, we had a lot of outstanding cases, a lot of casework and things waiting upon us. So, it was just really surreal. It was crazy because things move fast. They called me like 24 hours before then to come down to DC to get sworn in. And I'm like, oh my God, how are we supposed to, move that quick? And they're like, oh, we don't know. Just be here in 24 hours because that's you're getting sworn in no matter what. So it was really a fast pace, and we didn't have time to plan. The election, remember, was on September 18th. We got sworn in on this. It was just really fast and, kind of a surreal moment.
Okay, so what are some of the things that were kicking around in the last days of Congress before the election? Was there any business to be done? Was there anything to be had? What were some of the things that you, as in your first days, had to deal with?
I'm sorry, Jonathan. Either my service is bad or your feed was going outside. And hear the end of your question.
Oh, what are some of the things that you had to deal with in your first days in office, right? Like maybe like, was it dealing with committees, dealing with other people, dealing with other Congress people? What was it like in those first few days? Hello?
She's muted.
So
Okay.
it's really, this is bad. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
We can hear you well. We can hear you very well. But hello?
Oh man, and she
So I'm here. I'm just switching to another space because it's hard to hear you.
Okay. Oh, so I was asking, in the first few days, right? What was it like? Like, what did you have? What were some of the issues that came up in the first few days? Whether it was dealing with other Congress people, dealing with other issues, some of the issues that were there you had to grab onto. What were those first few days like?
So hopefully you can hear me, right?
We can hear you now, very well.
Good. Am I sound? Okay, good.
Great.
So the first day, so as soon as I got sworn in, literally the next like couple of minutes were votes. They were like, okay, you're a congressperson now. You've been sworn in. There are votes waiting on you. And I'm like, oh my God, like what? Like, what is going on? I don't know, ma'am. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, guys. Somebody was asking me a question. So it was crazy because you walked in and you literally had this woman, Bonnie Watson, who helped us out. She has sent the team over kind of to help, usher me in, to help me get settled. You're supposed to walk in with like staff, on day one. And of course, we didn't have like a full load of staff. So there were a lot of people who helped us, from Congressman, Minority Leader Jeffries, to the Clark, a lot of people who jumped in and was like, okay, we got you, like we we can help you through these first couple of days, get you settled. So they were really helpful. So as well as small business committee. So that first week there was a homeland markup. And I always tell people about the experience because people were inside, Congress people, Republican, MAGA, Congress folks who were like blaming immigrants for everything that can happen bad in the world, like, with Homeland, with security. And I mean, it was just unreal. And I was just sitting there like, wow, is this real? Like, I mean, people are really like this who are elected. And it was really like
Yes,
an
they
eye
are.
opener, to see, some of the nasty things people were saying. I mean, it was just a really, really crazy, busy week. And I left that week, to come back into district, to work and get started on a lot of the casework that was outstanding and things we had to work on. But it was just fast moving, fast paced, and, interaction with people that you've seen over the years, in person and actually working, shoulder to shoulder with them. It was just, it was but like I said, it feels like it's been 10 years already in the work, but definitely in that week of that moment, it was just super fast, super learning fast, picking up quickly, and kind of like on the job training, getting in there and getting working. I mean, it helps when you come from government already. Obviously, local government is, different from federal, at the federal space. But I think definitely having the experience that I had, as the council president and being on the city council helped me, maneuver a little easier.
And we always say all politics are local, right? And when you're getting ready to do a tour of the congressional tent, dates coming up, we'll also talk about that and let everyone know what those dates are. We have them, and we're going to let everyone know. But what is the purpose of the tour for the congressional tent? And what is the tour about? Hello?
So I think one thing, yeah, I'm here, Jonathan. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, very well.
Okay, so I think the purpose of the tour is to definitely, get out there and listen to constituents. Like, I think, for so long, people might feel like, hey, I'm a newbie. I'm new to this role. They want to see me, want to meet me, and, want to have an opportunity for me to listen to some of their concerns. And I think for us, for a clear vision for us going into January, into the 119th Congress, I want to make sure that I'm advocating directly for what people want. I think, sometimes folks just want to assume what folks want. Yeah, I got a good idea, but I think I want to spend some time to listen to them, give them an opportunity to do so. It's really hard sometimes when you're back and forth to DC. Like the whole month of December, we're going to be stuck in DC, working on many different items. But because we were doing these virtual listening sessions, we would love for them to be in person, but we're doing virtual listening sessions.
Did she freeze with my?
Hello?
But at
She's back.
I'm sorry, can you guys hear me? Did I freeze?
We are. You froze for a second, but you're back.
Am I back?
You're good now. You're good now.
Yeah.
Okay. Am I good now? I stepped outside because I think the service was bad in the corner I was in.
Oh, you are good now.
Am I good for you guys?
You're great.
Okay, good. So I was just saying that, we want to listen to, constituents, get an idea of, what they feel are concerns for them in the district. I mean, going into a Trump administration.
Okay, you froze up again.
Mm-hmm.
You froze up again, but I really it is happening when you are talking about the people that you are meeting in person, and they're saying the types of things that they're saying. Great. Now you were in the middle of talking about the tour, and especially and the last thing you said was going into the Trump administration.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. And I'm sorry, guys. One day I'm going to be able to do this from a computer like a regular person sitting down. So I was just saying, like, going into a Trump era, I think, people are, kind of scared a little bit, don't know what's going to happen, a little worried. And I want them to feel as close to me as they need to be, knowing that I'm advocating for them and I'm there for them. I think, when you're going into these scary, dark times where you're not sure what's going to happen and you just keep hearing about bad stuff, you want to make sure that the representative that you're sending, that you sent to Washington to represent you, that, you feel as close to them as possible. So this is why we're doing the listening tour. One, to listen to residents, get more information from them about what is important to them. And then also, too, just hope that they can find a connection to me and my office as we go through some dark times that are ahead of us, which I truly, truly believe there are. I mean, obviously, you wake up every day as a leader and you want to be optimistic, for the best. But I mean, at the same time, some of the things that we've been hearing that are coming down the pipeline, they're very concerning. And, we have to brace ourselves for what that looks like. But I also think it goes back to a bigger picture. Many of us have been talking about this past election this November and what Democrats could have did better and what happened, what were we not doing and what we could have did better. This is an opportunity too for me to hear that, as a younger generation in the Democratic Party. I think it's important to come back out and bring back out, to the drawing board, and see what went wrong and what we can be doing better to connect with, Democrats and American people. So really, we hope to gain a lot, from the first round of listening sessions that we're hosting for each municipality in the 10th, and spending time talking to people and listening to them, not, talking over them, not talking above them, but sitting there listening to some of the things that they have to say.
And that,
So,
and that,
go
yeah,
ahead. No, I know. I was just going to ask you though, but the world would like to know what were your own thoughts about how the election was. I'll use the word conducted, right? And what could have been done different in pursuit for different or better results. Just preliminarily, the world wants to know how does Congresswoman McIver feel about what went down and how it went down, and if she had a do-over again in terms of her own role in trying to facilitate some wins, what would she do different, or what should the party have done different?
So I think the whole process of, Joe Biden exiting, which look, I commend Joe Biden for, getting out, bowing out, endorsing Kamala Harris, in the race. I think that process itself was just troubling. I mean, we've never, really experienced that before, a person getting out so early, so close to the next election, after we already had a primary election. I think that whole process just was troubling. I think Kamala Harris ran a great campaign, in just the short days that she had, under 100 days, to really roll out a great election. You had one candidate who had been campaigning for 2 years and one who had to campaign in just 100 days. I mean, it was just a challenging task. And I don't think people who were like, oh, Joe needs to like get out, this and that, was really thinking about, the process and what it would take to really pull this thing off. So I just think there should have been a little bit more forward thinking on what that looked like during that time. But I also think for the whole campaign time, we're always talking about all of these high priority issues, this and, the war here and, this and that. And at the end of the day, every day, Americans are struggling to pay their basic bills. People are working multiple jobs. Rent is high as hell. Mortgage and taxes is beating people's behind. And groceries are expensive. Childcare is expensive. They don't have decent health care. These are everyday problems that people are just not spending time talking to. We're talking above, but we're not talking to those problems. So a lot of people that I would be speaking to, they're like, look, I'm working 2 jobs. I got 2 degrees. We're barely making it work. We need help here. There's no help for the middle class. We can't get up out of our situation. When you have those things taxing people on the side, they're not really thinking about you talking about the larger issues. So I just think it goes back to a communication piece. Like, you have to spend time trying to talk to people about how the things you're working on, the policies you're working on, has directly impacted them or will impact them, and you have to give them real examples, right? You can't like just lecture it, from a higher place. You have to really get down to the meat and the potatoes of it and really explain how these things are going to impact them, how they're impacting them, and the different changes. I always talk about it, Jonathan. I've talked about it when I came on the show before. When I had my council member for the day program, when I was a councilwoman, we would have young people come in and we would talk to them about the things that City Hall does that directly impacts them right inside this building that they know that's impacting them. Like, what have we done that's made things better? What are the things that we need to do to make it better? And what's directly going to change them, even getting down to the point of how does the school board impact them? What kind of decision are they making for them? So I think like going down all the way to the most basic point of like, yo, the lunch that you're eating, like the school board voted on this vendor to serve you this lunch. So if you hate it, then you need to go to the school board and say, look, we don't like the lunch. Like, the lunch is back. And
Right.
look, that sounds basic, but that's the kind of conversation you have to have with people, when you pull up to Springfield Avenue, because they ain't trying to hear you talk about, no big words, from far above. And they're like, look, that ain't helping me, lady. Everything you said don't even sound like it's helping me, even though it probably is going to help me. I just don't know that because I'm not talking the proper language, or really delivering to the point where I understand it.
Whether it be healthcare that might get or that goes to the violence prevention programs that we're beginning to get federal funding. So there are a lot of things that could have been related to people that weren't there. What is you spoke to some of the things that are coming down that people are scared of, and you're a little uneasy. So what is the stuff that's coming down that we need to be like, oh?
So I think like the short answer, without taking up all of the show's time, is one, people should be concerned about deportation. I think the immigration piece is the first, Trump already promised that first day he's going to use the military to deport, ICE, everything of the above in his power to deport. And I think that is what many people are worried about. We've been talking to many different organizations. Even I heard some folks say, look, how are we trying to work on getting this person their green card, getting paperwork, like they're working overtime, to kind of get people settled and worrying about folks' families and different things of that nature. So I think that's the one critical piece. And then the second critical piece that Congress has been putting a lot of focus on is around the taxes, the tariffs. You see all of the conversation coming up about it. Trump tariffs on Mexico and Canada, and what's the people don't understand like that cost is going to end up going to the consumer. So, now, how do you think like when folks have to pay an extra tax to get their materials, who do you think is going to pay for it? The everyday consumers are going to be paying for it. So those things are our Ways and Means Committee is going to be highly focused on that, fighting back on some of those things. I mean, it's just going to be really nutty. And then I would say lastly, definitely is around Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, which many people, believe it or not, they don't even know that the Affordable Care Act is Obamacare. So whoever's on here listening, that is exactly what it is. And folks are worried about that. Trump has talked about stripping away that. He tried to do that when he was in office last time, and because Congress had majority, the Democrats had control of the Congress, they were able to, put some brakes on that. But at the end of the day, that is definitely concerning. Many Americans, get health care through the Affordable Care Act, and so definitely that's something that's going to be challenging. But I just think we're going to spend the next 2 years, the next 4 years really, but the next 2 until midterm elections playing defense, basically trying to fight against many of the things that are coming down the pipeline that, to me are just going to be super scary. And I know folks are like, oh, we lived through this before. Like, no. Before it was like, okay, yeah, he's crazy, he's a racist, he's a sexist, all these things, and he's doing this, he's doing that. Now it's like he's told you everything that he's going to do that was horrible. Like, and you voted for him, he's going to do them. Like he's gonna make all those promises on Project 2025, all of those, crazy, well, how did we get here? Well, I mean, how do you think we got here? Like, folks voted for him, like, and this is how we're here. But I mean, just looking at those appointments, I mean, each one just gets worse. It was getting worse and worse of, them coming down. So I just think, it's going to be a crazy time. But those are some of the top three items that, Dems are, extremely, concerned about. Of course, there's a ton of others, but those are things that we just know that his administration coming in, and him out of his own mouth has already promised to, take a stab at, go full force on.
I want to thank you for coming out against HR 945, which is to your original point about the attempts of the new administration to come in and to further militarize this whole question of deportation. We've got a Newark challenge. Your elder in Congress and from your delegation, Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, has spoken out about a fresh effort to create some spaces, and what were formerly healing spaces, by the way, to warehouse people who are going to be detained and deported. It's a rough situation. But let me add that you're not just a newbie in Congress, but you also one of the younger members, right? But let me ask you a bread and butter question for us old heads too. Everybody's worried about. What are you hearing? What should we anticipate in trying to defend and protect? Is something as basic as Social Security, which is in its 91st year, right? And that Republicans have fought to destroy from its very onset in 1933.
So yes, we've heard attacks against Social Security as well as Medicare. There has a lot of conversation about not properly funding or try to come down the pipeline. But honestly, there are millions and millions of Americans that receive funding through Social Security. It's not a Democrat. All Democrats only just don't get Social Security. Republicans do too. And we're hoping that the force of those many people that will be impacted would be able to slow down some Republicans from supporting, non-funding to go to Social Security. So, these things, I keep telling people this stuff is bipartisan problems. People a poor issue is not a Democrat issue. There are Republicans who are poor as well, who are living in poverty, who need assistance. So these are bipartisan problems. Affordability is a bipartisan problem. You don't have to draw a line in the sand for that. These are issues that are impacting Americans on both sides of the aisle, rather they're Republicans, Democrats, or independents, or they don't know which way they are, but they know that they need to be able to afford to live in this country. So I just, at the end of the day, I'm just praying that, being optimistic once again, because you got to be optimistic in this business. You just can't wake up and be like, oh, it's gonna be some BS today. You have to. Yeah, you gotta wake up every day and still have some hope. So I'm extremely hopeful that some folks across the line, who are not extremists, MAGA, Republicans, will understand that we have to do what's right, for the American people.
Well, I thank you so much for being with us, and we are always honored to have you on. We want to really follow what's going on. It is both scary and exciting, right? In terms of what's going on, and it's great hearing from you about all the different things that are happening. And we want to definitely get into it into much more detail as it goes on. It is always an honor and always a pleasure. Can you also give us that? Is there any hip hop artist that you are rocking with in this particular moment that speaks to you in any particular way?
Keep these crazy people from driving you crazy.
I mean, hip hop. I mean, I don't even know. I haven't even been listening to much hip hop lately, and that's not even like me. I've been playing like Nina Simone at this point. that keep me uplifted. But as always, my go-to is Jay-Z all the time. But definitely I've been rocking some Nina these last couple of weeks or whatever. But I just want to say, Jonathan, and to Baba, and to Ed, we definitely, I look to be back on soon. Let me know, to be back on, just to update you all as we go back into session and end out this 118th, Congress, and go into 19th. Look forward to be on. It's a lot going on, so it's a lot to bunch in, in just 30 minutes, to get through it. So let me know the next I can come back on and talk about some things in detail, especially as they come up or they're on their way coming up. I want to thank you all. I want to encourage everyone to tune in, jump on the Zoom onto the listening tour. You can submit questions in advance, be on while you're driving home from work, just to listen to what some other folks have to say or drop some of your concerns in. But we're really looking forward to grabs as much as we can from these listening sessions, and we want to definitely have them in person whenever I get a chance to get back from DC for enough time to do so. But we don't want to hold up any progress or any work. So definitely we hope, that folks will take advantage and be on. And congratulations, Jonathan. I heard that you're going to tie in the nine. Go you.
I am.
Joining the club. Welcome soon.
Thank you. Big shout out to Ashley Renee, my wonderful bride.
He's got him a great bride coming his way. We're very happy.
Good for you. Well, good for you. Congratulations. And thank you all. Hopefully I see you soon. And I'm sorry again about the technical problems, you all. One day, like I said, I'm going to be at my computer and not doing other things.
Don't even. Yeah. You do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. There's a lot to do. Do what you got to do. So we absolutely appreciate you all the time. All the time.
Thank you, guys. See you soon. Bye, Baba.
Okay.
See you soon. Take care. All politics are local. America's number one political hip hop streaming show. We are the mayor of Orange is supposed to come on at this point. He's actually en route someplace, so he is going to hopefully chime in from there. He has the so hopefully we'll be hearing from him soon. In the meantime, we can start with the subject of this session, which is, man, the presidential race did not go the way that we wanted it to go at all, right? And it was clearly disastrous from a Democratic point of view, but I think even more so from just an American point of view, right? Like I think that if people actually believed that he would do what he said he was going to do, and they voted for him, that's pretty violent, right? Because these mass deportations are going to, I don't know how to do that in a way that, like Trump said, it would be bloody, right? So he campaigned on saying he would deport millions of people, and then said it would be bloody, and then said he would use the military to do it. We have a lot of conversations about normal police brutality on the show. We have normal conversations about what happens when someone kicks in the door, no knock, and searches, right? And when you're dealing with, when you're talking about deporting millions of undocumented people in a concerted roundup, I don't know how that happens without kicking in doors, without doing raids, without doing things that in normal circumstances kill a lot of innocent Black people, right? Like we understand what happened with Breonna Taylor with no knock warrants. We understand that what happens with case after case of police officer in these incredibly tense and violent situations, and innocent people end up getting killed, right? And so we know that these things are happening, and he's talking about doing it with millions of people. And he said he would do it, and the majority of people, ended up voting for that, or at least seemingly ended up voting for that. And it is one of those violent things that I think history is going to look back on in an incredible way. Everybody who's looking at this is like, this is going to be horrible. And the governor's race, right, we think is going to have a lot to do with the way in which this turns out. I think that for anyone who thinks that this is just an immigrant issue and just an undocumented issue, it's not. Because if you use the military to round up millions of people and imprison them, you set up an apparatus of private prisons, of mass militarization of like we have not seen domestically. And that means that the power of the person who sets that up, they can start with people who are undocumented and then go to any other crisis policy, right? We can put them on the urban streets. The protesters who are protesting against this, who are US citizens, well, maybe that can be used against you, right? Trump did talk about using the military to quell protesters, right? We know that this is going to happen. We know that there's going to be probably massive demonstrations and protests against it. What happens as a result of that, it becomes just like demonstrably scary, right? People talked about how how states' rights, ironically, will be used and weaponized to help push back against a potential horrible federal authority that wants to come in and kick in doors in a massive way. The person who is governor, right, is going to have a lot of power say in how that goes down. And so there are a lot of different issues that are coming up, that being just one of them. But I think that when we're looking at Governor Murphy, who already got a warning from the Trump administration about compliance and threats to that he would actually use the law to incarcerate people who resisted, seemingly to include governors, right, putting politicians in jail. And I think that like this seems unreal, even me saying it, right? Like this seems unreal, even me saying that on the table, right, in real conversations with members of the future Trump administration are having with the actual current governor of New Jersey are threats of imprisonment for non-compliance. It seems crazy, but it is just Friday or Thursday, right, in where we live right now. Zaid, what are some of the other issues that you think that are really important in terms of this governor's race? I know that I'm always blatantly supporting Ras Baraka, our mayor, for governor. I think there are a lot of positive things that he will bring to the fore. This is going to be a crowded field. I think that he'll be able to do well in a crowded field. But what are some of the things that, or some of the issues that you think would be important in terms of this governor's race? I know that on the issue we talked about, Newark is a sanctuary city, right? I think that the mayor at some point referred to the Trump administration previously as he wanted us to be slave catchers, right? As in trying to round people up and to try to incarcerate them, and would have no parts of that. And I know that there are a ton of other issues as well as we involved in terms of the governor's race. What are some of the things that you think that people should highlight when they're thinking about who they should support for governor? You're on mute, Zay.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the biggest things right there. We should not at all minimize the significance of that particular issue that you have raised in a very singular and broad way. Meaning that, right, the underlying issue that put Trump in office's race, and he singled out the most vulnerable Black and brown populations in his use of race, right? And let us be clear that definitely can happen in the gubernatorial election, and it's going to take some gubernatorial candidates to be able to stand up to the backwardness and the harm of racism in that way, to dare to stand out against that, right? There's one particular Democrat who I think would be horrible on this, who is very much in sync with Trump's immigration policies, and that is Josh Gottheimer. I'm gonna make it plain. Josh Gottheimer.
Who is this?
Josh Gottheimer, right?
Okay.
Who's congressional from the northwest section of New Jersey, right? He's the Joe Manchin of New Jersey in real terms, right? And I mentioned HR 945, and we talked about this in previous segments on the show last week and the week before, and we'll talk about it again with Amy Torres. That is a bill that targets organizations and people who support issues and peoples who they deem as terrorists, right? So, and they've come at Cuban Solidarity Movement forces in previous iterations of this, right? Of course, I mentioned today at the top of the show that today is an International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. There is a full-fledged international Palestinian solidarity movement that is fully developed, multiracial, intergenerational in character. A lot of those forces are they're priming this government to attack those forces. It can be attacked on the streets with the further weaponizing of the police as they attack college students during the school year last year, and using the Department of Treasury, right? If you're a nonprofit and you're supporting this particular group who we say are terrorists, then we can knock you out of your tax exempt status and possibly look at you for some other kinds of isolation or criminalization. That's how dangerous that bill was. And there were a number of Democrats in Congress who supported that, like Josh Gottheimer.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
Oh yeah. So the question of race and how that plays out in immigrant justice is going to be a big deal, right? So we're going to need some some gubernatorial candidates that have the spine and the principle to stand up to that. Murphy needs to stand up to that. Murphy needs to sign the Immigrant Justice Act. See, Democrats got to fight how they fight.
Right.
For years, the right wing came at any notion of civil rights and women's rights from a states' rights perspective.
Right.
Now they got the federal government on lock, right? So the states is a battleground for folks to resist. Now they can't have it both ways. If the states' rights and we genuinely reestablish Jersey as a blue state, which ain't gonna be easy.
Right.
It's not gonna be easy.
Jersey almost went red. Right.
Yeah, right. As a fight back method in order to do that. So Murphy needs to sign as many progressive bills that are sound in terms of New Jersey's state constitution before he leaves office, and we need somebody with some spine, and of course we're both United Ras, right? With some spine to be able to stand up to the right-wing trend that is going to be in the atmosphere being pushed by these bullies in the White House and in Congress. Absolutely, we got to do that. Can't dismiss that. The other thing, of course, is that the work that some of us do, the ground that we have broken courageously doing this work on community-based violence intervention, right? We're in the White House.
Right.
People like Al Tariq Best, who runs the Hub, right? Akila Sherrill, right? Keisha, right? Literally in the White House, right? Not once, but several times, and bringing resources back that helped us bring this violence down to a 60-year low, right? Next Justice Department is going to be deadlocked against that, right? So we've got, but who out of folks running for the governor seat are talking about what we have done in Newark, and it's something that can be done on a state level. And the only one I hear saying that is the one talking about the reimagining of public safety, and is none other again than Ras Baraka, right?
Because there's a state. Because the thing that I think that was brilliant that was done in the last 4 years is that the administration in Newark looked at this from not just a local level, but looked at it on a statewide level, so that they pushed, and there is a statewide Office of Violence Prevention, and then also worked nationally, right? They did a lot of work nationally, talking to people all over the country and talking to congressmen all over the country. So the local the state also led to a federal Office of Violence Prevention that has been effective all over the country. Right.
Yeah, so that's
And
real stuff.
And it's interesting because I think these are the debates these are the conversations that are really important, because there were a lot of really good programs in the last administration for a lot of urban areas where, like, Biden lost votes, right? And as in, like I said, you are an activist. You are one of the most astute, experienced political activists. You are nationally known for the work that you have done. What is the reason why, in an administration that probably did a lot more substantially, like in terms of funds and money to urban areas for programs that specifically work, the stuff that, we had this conversation 2 weeks ago, the stuff that like the lack of the lack of a specific investment that this administration, the Biden-Harris administration, did. And it's almost like they got no credit for it. It's almost like they had all these programs on environmental justice, and they had these programs on violence prevention, but it's like it didn't translate to the people who ostensibly would benefit or were benefiting from these things.
Race is a wild card. It's always been a wild card in this country's history. And racism certainly allows people sometimes to vote in a way that is so subjective that it's even at times against their own objective interests, right? And we're seeing that. There's no way in hell that an objective electorate would have saw Donald Trump winning a majority of the white vote, right? And almost, the coalition, the multiracial coalition of non-white folks almost didn't matter. That's how well and how deep white folks voted for this guy talking about the Haitian people eating people's dogs and cats. I mean, there's nothing that is totally subjective stuff that's deep in the psyche of this particular of this country. The other thing too is that I was still
like when you're saying like in Georgia, for example, Harris did get more votes than Joe Biden did get last term, right? She got more votes than Joe Biden did last term. She also got more votes than Brian Kemp from anybody who'd run for elected office before, right? Apparently she got more votes than any Democrat had ever gotten in the state, and still lost. In part because she only got 29% of the white vote, like 29%.
9%.
Right.
That ain't close to that.
Right. And so she also got fewer votes from urban centers, right? And so even with the overwhelming white vote, if there had been the massive voter turnout in Black and brown communities absolutely opposed to it, then it might not have different, right? But you were saying in terms of this. But talk to me, man. What are you saying in terms of this white, like, mass, like they just coalesced together to add more votes? Because it's interesting, because Harris got the third most votes of anyone ever for president, right? She got more than Obama got. She got more than Hillary Clinton got, right? Third most votes. Didn't get as much as Biden did in 2020, but got the third most number of votes ever. But that just wasn't enough, right? And you were talking about like levels of like white people going together, and you can't underplay race. When you say race, are you talking about like white supremacy specifically?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And all of its variation, in its anti-Black variation, in its anti-Muslim variation, in its anti-Arab variation, in its anti-Latinx all of its variations, right? All of those folks who Trump othered reflect all of those communities and all of that diversity, right? The bold, unapologetic attack on so-called DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. They want to get rid of all of that, right? The attack on education, right? On anything meaningful in education that corrects history and exposes how harmful racism has been in our history. All of that. It's all in the sauce. It's all there, you know. And then this hasn't happened before. It has, right? Whenever the country is divided along racial lines, right? And I often refer to the '68 election where Nixon came in, right? In a close election, but white folks went to him, right? And young folks were for the most part Democratic, but they were critical support, and there was some division within their ranks over Vietnam, and here we had some very serious division over Gaza. Right? I don't want to dismiss that at all either, because that's where the Democrats made mistakes on the question of race. Right? When you are financing a genocide, and they put the brakes on that early. I said, look, October 7th happened on Amiri's birthday when we were doing a town hall on, the building a network around community-based violence intervention. And I suggested when right-wing forces in state government came at the city that, I said, you know what, while y'all are talking about what happened in Israel, that's a beef that's decades old, right? And we are actually making peace in the streets. How come we're not talking? We can make peace here in our streets without the police. Why can't y'all use some similar tactics to make some peace over there? There should have been a major push for a negotiated settlement and release early in that process, as opposed to weaponizing it from the onset that set off, this whole thing that really and for all of the support and military might that Israel has and used, right? They have succeeded outside of that of totally isolating both the United States and Israel in the entire international human community, right? People don't see that because people don't see, what the world looks like outside of our local spaces, but the international community is turning their heads and backs on the United States and Israel in a way that is unprecedented.
Right. And it won't, and this election won't make it better, right? Like
make it worse before anything happens. Yes.
Right. Like from not having a Palestinian speak at the DNC convention, to not being more assertive about the break with Netanyahu, to not putting out a clear direction. Apparently in Michigan, I think that according to the New York Times today, or maybe today or yesterday, they were looking at the different cities and different states and talked about drop-off, right? And they said 40% of the Democratic drop-off were in Arab districts. So that the drop-off that you can conceivably say that this cost Michigan, right? And in a way where a lot of the undecided voters, the ones who were saying we are non-committed voters, right? They were very specific. They were like, look, we're not committed unless you can show us something on this issue. We are not going to support your candidate.
They were begging for the Democrats to just let this just hear us out.
Just do something, right?
Yes.
And I think that if they had let someone speak, I don't see what the downside of letting a Palestinian speak at the convention would be, and giving I think it was supposed to be a state representative, a Democratic state representative from Georgia, who was supposed to be the person representing the Palestinian cause, and speaking out loud about it at the DNC.
They had allowed Rashida Tlaib to say something,
right? And which should have been the thing, right? And apparently they even the person who was supposed to speak even moderated what they were saying for that reason. Great!
It's very Martin way.
Oh, absolutely. Mayor Warren, honored to have you on, man. I know
How are
that
you?
this is a very busy time for you. I know that you're in the midst of traveling, so
I
thank
am.
you.
I am. I am. I hope you guys can hear me.
We can hear you very well. You
Oh,
sound
very
great.
good. Very, very good.
All right, so Mayor Warren, you took a courageous race and you took a stance that many have said was courageous. Some people said was going against the political establishment, but you chose to endorse Ras Baraka as the governor for the state of New Jersey. Why did you endorse Governor Baraka? And
When the sign of the scene went the other way,
when
you could
right.
further contextualize that.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. It wasn't that courageous to do. I got the political bug when I saw my uncle sworn into the assembly 50 years ago, and I understood power, and I understood the criteria for electing a governor. And they told me that in order to have a good governor, you need someone who has executive experience, someone who has been in tough political fights, someone who has governed from the ground up, and someone who has an understanding of the people and business all at the same time, and someone who can go to different venues such as Washington and Trenton and fight for resources for their people. And I took that construct the same way we chose every other governor, Democratic governor that we've chosen. I used those same measures, and the only person that came close to measuring up to that standard was Mayor Ras Baraka of Newark.
And so what are some of the specific issues or the specific things that you're like, look, man, he's definitely the one that I'm endorsing? What were some of the things that jumped out at you?
When you look at the issues that affect New Jerseyans across the state, when you look at affordability, when you look at keeping corporate headquarters here in the state so that they can employ our people, when you look at work on improving transportation for our people, certainly when you look at the issue of urban education and public education in general, all of those issues converge on our state, no matter what part of the state you live in. And the fact that there's a tax base there that you can maintain affordable taxes. All those issues are affecting New Jerseyans across the board, and they need some relief, and they need new ways of doing things, and they need innovation. And Ras Baraka has scored high marks on all of those issues, and his innovations are just unparalleled. I mean, one of the important issues of crime and public safety, the way he's innovating is just not being done, and he's actually a model for the state of New Jersey, a model for public safety advocates across the state. So those important grassroots issues that affect every New Jerseyan are things that he scores highest on. And that, and of course, he's a good friend of mine. We're urban mayors together, so I get to see an intimate look at the work that he does on a regular basis.
Okay, and so you're talking about the anti-violence infrastructure that was set up in the city of Newark, where
Right.
Violent crime is actually at over a 50 to 60-year low.
That's right.
And when a mayor is able to do that, it should garner national headlines and spotlights. The only thing that I've really seen on that covering this is the New Yorker article, Ras Baraka's Reasonable Radical, right? I'd recommend anyone who is thinking about supporting any other candidate to read that, right? It is a very reasonable estimation of the things that the Ras has done, right? Whether it be from crime to the replacing of lead lines, getting ahead of the rest of the country. Literally got more lines replaced in Newark than in Flint, whose problem started like 6 years earlier, right? So I think that when you're dealing with the various issues that we have, a lot of the innovative solutions were being found in the city of Newark. What are some of the other, I know that your time is, and I know that you don't have much time, but what are some of the other issues or areas, like whether it be environmental justice, whether it be issues of race, his housing plan, like what like struck you as also as being
the issue, and I'm in the airport actually headed to South Africa with the family. And anytime you see me in a beard like this, it signifies vacation. So
I wasn't gonna comment. I was like, I don't think I've seen you with a beard like that.
I joked that I had to color it gray, but no, that's the natural gray. Some of the really highlight issues for us, Chris, when you look at the issue of race, Ras has been under the forefront in terms of bringing our state together and bringing people together to solve problems that affect you across race, across gender, across age. So that, I think his record and what he's done inside of government, outside of government, as an educator, all of those progressive issues are pretty clear, and I don't really expound upon them that much because they get their own coverage. But issues such as using Section 8 dollars for home ownership, allowing the city to put a pot aside to go after some of these abandoned housing, make it into decent, affordable living, and then selling them to residents at a rate that's affordable and profitable both for the city and gets equity into the hands of the new owner. Those kind of economic issues are important. I don't care where you go across the state. When you look at really suburban places where there's a glut of office buildings, where now they're looking at Newark to say, maybe we can innovate and turn those into housing that people will come to, start to rent, and put those back on the tax rolls. Those are kind of ideas that are coming through the city of Newark. When you look at the environmental issues and how he's cleaning up the waterfront there in Newark, the lead service lines, when he's looking at having grants and other resources for people to remove oil tanks, and when he's excavating these large lots where they're doing development and having them clean beyond what the standard is. Those are innovations that are coming out of Newark, coming from Mayor Baraka, that we should be looking at statewide. When we get more people looking for investing and looking for home ownership, it's a direct link to banks who want to come in and service our community and grow the economy. If you go across the board, when Ras Baraka went to the supermarket convention where all supermarketeers go, and he got Jersey Mike's to come to Newark, the one thing that he learned was that if you build, they will come. If there's a population there, come. If you rebuild neighborhoods, they'll come. That kind of economic engine has been fueling Newark since he's been in office. You got the Mars company who came back to Newark and started to expand with the expansion of Prudential. All of those places always considered leaving Newark for better environs. It's always been the person sitting in the mayor's seat to try to keep them there. Ras kept them there, and now he got them to expand as well. If you look at the renovations they're going to be doing to Penn Station, all of those kind of capital projects and corporate projects are important for the city and for its growth. And Ras doesn't get a lot of attention for those kind of hard economic issues, but he does get attention for the innovative things that he's doing, especially with crime prevention. He's been called National League of Cities across the country to teach them how they can do the same thing in their towns.
I think I like the way you spotlighted that, because one of the things that you were saying is that, what people underestimate about what he's done in his leadership, because he's seen as like, or at least radical, right, or progressive, right? They think that doesn't go well with business, right? But one of the things he's really done is he brought a lot of business to Newark. He brought a lot of corporations and companies to Newark, right, and got them to invest under his leadership. So doing the highly progressive things that he did those highly progressive things and got corporate buy-in for the things that he is doing, or got them to come in spite of that. So I think that's great that you're emphasizing that, because I think that when people are like, oh, there's a potential for like why someone who everyone thinks is progressive, they must be bad for business, but that's the opposite of Newark. They've been amazing for business and actually a model for the rest of the state. The rest of the state could wish they had as many people and many corporations and as much money investing in the city of Newark as they did under Ras Baraka. So I think that is probably an important thing to push and emphasize throughout. So I'm glad that you brought that up, and I'm glad that you absolutely highlighted that. Now we're gonna have to get you back on. I know that you're on vacation. We want to get you out so that you can enjoy you are a very hardworking mayor, and when you have a little bit of time to just grab a little bit of time on this break, you definitely should do that. And we're honored that you're able to take some of this time to talk to us about this. We're gonna have to get you back on a lot as well to talk about more about what's going on in Orange. More about what's going on in the politics of the region as well. So, question: on your vacation, any particular hip hop you're listening to, you rocking with?
Yeah, of course. My son has me with the standards of Kendrick Lamar. So certainly, I'll be listening to him along the way. There'll probably be some Alicia Keys and some Mary J. Blige as well. You know, we did the life of Mr. Peace out of Orange that just came out.
Okay.
And Mary J. Blige was in Orange, filming a portion of that. So in homage to her, I'm going to listen to some of her as well.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't know that part of it was filmed in Orange. Did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Kendrick Lamar album, the new Kendrick Lamar album is pretty good. Definitely, I was listening for the last few days. Something as a distraction from what else has been going on. We got to get you back on just to talk about your political analysis of this election, New Jersey's tilt to people saying it's becoming a swing state, all that.
Yeah, I think we really have to look at that, and we got to look at down the road. People want to hear something new from Democrats. It was made clear, and I think they still have that hunger for the gubernatorial, and that's another place where
I'll make that point. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be important. But we should talk. Your
Absolutely.
Way in educating, and we should do a lot more of these types of discussions because a lot of stuff is at stake coming up in this new election.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. We will definitely have you back on. We'll be having these discussions. We're going to encourage you to bring on some people that you know also that can help us with these conversations. So, thank you again.
Let me ask you this one last thing, Jonathan. Let me this is the short answer. Where in South Africa are you going?
We are going to go to Johannesburg, Cape Town, Pretoria.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Around the time I met your mother-in-law, I was very much in the throes of some nonviolent direct action around the divestment movement, running around with a guy we call a Dimuchungo, who y'all call Lawrence Sam. Right? And neither one of us have been to South Africa yet. But South Africa occupies a very deep place in all of our hearts. So I want you to enjoy that, son. Because a few years ago, you couldn't.
Thank you. We brought my uncle sponsored the South Africa bill in New Jersey, and certainly brought
everybody and tell everybody who your uncle is. So folks don't know.
Yes, great. Got sworn in 1974. Served 24 years in legislature. Demanded that New Jersey divest all funds from companies in South Africa. We got to meet Nelson Mandela when he came to New York as a result of that. So, dear to my heart.
Okay.
Have a great trip. Have a great trip.
Have a great trip. Be careful. Be safe. Have fun.
Jonathan, you saw Carmen. She was waving at you.
Oh, hey! Hey, Carmen. We'll go back. Science Park High School debate team. Yay! Take care, man. Thank you again.
Appreciate you.
Awesome. Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah.
All right. So, that's we're definitely going to get him to come back on to talk about what is fully going on with the politics in New Jersey and how they really do. If everyone's really taking heart in what happened in the national campaign, and they're saying that, she needed to talk about bread and butter issues, she needed it to be more progressive, she needed to, Bernie Sanders jumping in, right? Like, they need to talk about the working class, right? Like, if any of that is remotely true, and the Democratic Party sees that as a mantra, they would get behind Ras Baraka. They 100% for this. We had on another guest as well in the background, but we also have on. You said what?
Yes. Gwen DeBro is taking Gabriel Bryant's place.
Okay. And she was in the background a few seconds ago, and just slipped out. So we're gonna put her back in, and we have Mama Pam Africa, who's on here right now, and we're talking about, and you could actually introduce this Zai, because I couldn't do it justice, right?
December 9th will mark, it's hard to believe how many years have gone by, will mark the 43rd anniversary of the ordeal that put Mumia Abu Jamaal in the clutches of the state. It was on that evening back in 1981 on Locust and 13th in downtown Philly that Mumia was shot and almost killed by Philadelphia police and charged with the killing of a Philadelphia police officer, Daniel Faulkner. He faced the death penalty. We had to fight like hell to save him from the death penalty, including literally packing the court a number of times against one of the most racist judges in the country to get him off of death. And even after the discovery of fresh evidence that clearly points to his innocence, he is still in the clutches of the state. And it's hard to believe that we're looking at 43 years, that happening 43 years ago. 43 years ago. And December 9th, 1990s, when we really started ratcheting up those protests. And that was my second of a long stream of protests some 33 years ago. And I'll actually be traveling on December 9th, and I'll actually have to miss it this year. But December 9th is in the language of Americans talking about Pearl Harbor, whose anniversary is 2 days before that, is a day that in the Black liberation movement that lives on in infamy, right? Because of what happened to Mumia Abu Jamaal. I would dare say if there's any one reason or one person who's responsible for Mumia Abu Jamaal still being here, there's none other than my big sister and comrade, Pam Africa, the Minister of Confrontation of the MOVE organization, and who led the International Family and Friends of Mumia Abu Jamaal for the longest. And we've got with her Gwen DeBrow, the Free Mumia Coalition based in New York City. And New York has always played a critical role logistically and publicly and politically and all of those other LYs in supporting Mumia over the years, right? So we got a lot to talk about because December 9th is right around the corner. And because somebody's getting married next week and somebody else got to work next week, we probably won't even be on.
Fair.
We had to get this in
Fair.
now. We got to turn this up now. Gwen, I'm going to come to you first. Just give us the nuts and bolts about what's going to happen that weekend, because we got December 7th and December 9th, and then we'll come to Mama Pam and let her big picture this conversation in the unique way that she always does. Good to have you with us, Gwen. Good to have you with us, Gwen.
Thank you for the invitation, Zaid. Oh boy, there's a lot going on. That's all I can tell you. There will be a teach-in on the 7th, which is a Saturday at a community college in Philadelphia. I'm not sure whether there's going to be a Zoom contingent for it. So far, I don't think so, but I'm not sure. And then on the 9th, of course, we will be physically in Philadelphia, and we have a van leaving from New York City if anybody wants to go. they can call the Free Mumia Coalition hotline at 212-330-8029. If you want to go to Philadelphia with us in the van caravan for freedom for Mumia Abu Jamaal. And unfortunately, yes, this is his 43rd year wrongfully incarcerated, and the state very well knows it. If the state, I know the prosecutor that's continuing to prosecute this case knows full well that Mumia is innocent. Maybe the upper echelon doesn't know, but they don't want to know. The truth of the matter is they don't want to open up the can of worms that everybody knows, that prosecutorial misconduct is a standard in criminal cases, especially when that defendant is an activist, journalist, speaking out against violence against Black people. And Mumia is the poster child for that, being an activist when he was young, a member and founder of the Philadelphia Black Panther Party, and a virulent supporter of MOVE, who have been released. All of them have been released, except for those, obviously, who died, unfortunately, behind enemy lines. Merrill, Africa, and Philip, unfortunately, they died. But the rest of them got out. And we intend to see that Mumia gets out sooner rather than later, because he's aging. He's 70 years old now. And, he has congestive heart failure. He's got diabetes. He's got a extreme case of eczema, and other health issues that need critical attention on the outside, not in prison. He got all of that because he was in prison wrongfully, and then he developed a congestive heart failure because of the lockdown in the prisons during COVID. So he's sick because he's in prison, and in prison wrongfully. So so you can find out about what's going on with the indoor and the outdoor protests on behalf of Mumia. You could go to our website, freemumia.com, to register if you want to go down with us to Philly. And I'm not sure there's going to be a Zoom link for the indoor rally, but for those who are in Philly, take heed. Come to the teach-in. It's not only going to be about Mumia. So come to the teach-in. We really need young people to step up to the plate and be a part of this movement to free Mumia. We can't do it without you, and we don't want to do it without you.
So Gwen, you now I remember when you started.
Really?
Yeah, sure.
Wow.
I've been with this thing for 30 years, right?
Yeah, me about 20 plus.
And you were much younger.
Yeah,
right?
that's true. I didn't have gray hair.
Yeah. So, and I'm trying to pull up everything for the action. It's going to be 2:00 at Philadelphia City Hall. We've done a lot of
right, and we will. Hall. Yeah, and we'll be making a stop at the Larry Krasner's office, the DA, the liberal DA, who has so far found and led to the freedom of 40 wrongfully incarcerated people. 40 plus, actually. It's more than 40. But Mumia should have been the first one, if not the last. He knows, I'm fully confident that he knows Mumia is innocent, but he's afraid of what will happen to his job if he acts on behalf of Mumia. But I thought he was going to be, doing the right thing. He said he was going to be concerned about justice, and he was going to make sure, that the DA's office was going to examine every, wrongfully incarcerated case that came across their desk. And now that the new evidence is upon us. We all know that the main so-called witness was potentially bribed to testify against Mumia. There was a note written, handwritten
Where's my
note.
money?
Where is my money? Exactly. And when can I get it? When can I come by the office to get it? So that's tainted testimony. And we know that he wasn't even on the scene. He wasn't near the scene of the crime. I mean, he may have been somewhere in the area, but he was not there. So he said that he saw Mumia kill Faulkner. He was not present during that unfortunately death of the police officer. He was not present. We also know the jury, the original jury, did not know that there was a fourth person at the scene. And the reason why we know there was a fourth person at the scene is because the dead officer, Daniel Faulkner's hat, his police issued hat, was on the passenger side of the car that Mumia's brother was driving. The main so-called witness said that he was parked behind the police officer's truck or car. No way. The pictures don't even show him near in those photos. There were several photos taken by Pedro Polikoff, who initially offered those photos to the prosecutor, and they turned them down. Speaking of not really wanting to know the truth, they turned those photos down, and the photos clearly show that there was a fourth person at the scene. Like I said, the hat was on the driver's side of the cab, and Billy was with his business partner, Kenneth Freeman, and we believe that Kenneth Freeman was the individual who in fact killed Daniel Faulkner, because when Mumia was running to the scene to try to help his brother, the officer shot Mumia. Shot him in the chest, in fact. So how in the world was he able to kill anybody? And would a professional journalist, which he was, would he be running to the scene with a weapon in his hand to the police? It doesn't make any sense. There's information that Mumia's 38 registered 38 was in the car, was in the glove compartment, his weapon. And the police say they never did a paraffin test to see whether Mumia's hands had a gun, was fired, and no such test. So they say they didn't do, but clearly they had to have done it. In a officer, a dead officer, an officer was shot, and you don't do, a basic test to see whether the Mumia's registered gun was fired and whether he had gunpowder residue on his hands. That doesn't make any sense. So the case is a frame up from the very beginning, which is why we plan to be in Philadelphia on what is it, Monday? It's a Monday.
It's a Monday.
Monday, December 9th.
You're doing good. Right on.
Monday, December 9th from 2 to 5, and we have a bus leaving from New York. We'll be bringing a van load of people down to New York. So call that number, 212-330-8029, and we plan to be back in the city by 8 o'clock.
Great. Now let me bring Pam into this conversation, because you raised, and nobody really talks about the nuts and bolts of the case, of the facts. Nobody talks about that hardly, right? But since we brought up Mr. Freeman, and we want to make the MOVE connection, because we do not forget and do not disconnect the horrible fascistic attacks that MOVE has endured, including the August 8th, 78 attack that put most of them in prison, and including absolutely the bombing of MOVE on May 13th, 85 on Osage Avenue. And in the shadows of the bombing of May 13th, 1985, somebody else got killed that you just mentioned, Gwen. And who might that be? Y'all want both of y'all to chime in on that, and we make some connections. Kenneth Freeman.
Yes.
How about that?
Also, you know, he was picked out of a lineup,
That's right.
right?
That's
And
true.
you know, he was definitely picked out of the lineup. Hey, Gwen, and everything.
Hey, good evening, Pam.
Yeah, and a great job. Another thing that happened, they recovered the bullet, and they said it matched Mumia's gun. But they, just like any other, you know, other things in this case, they lost the bullet. Of course,
Mm.
it's very detrimental to the case to say that, you know, it was from Mumia's gun. They lost the pieces. We didn't, you know.
Mm.
So, you know, the paraffin test, for them to say that they forgot that. And watching TV and all these cop shows and things, this was the wintertime. And I'm talking about missing evidence and Mumia being arrested on the scene. Don't, when you fire a gun one time or two times, you have a blowback and it would be on the clothing. It was winter. And also he had a jacket on, a jumpsuit that, you know, came down to his wrist and below it, you know. So how come that was never shown, you know, because it would have had powder burn on it.
And it would have had because the prosecutor says that Mumia stood over Daniel Faulkner and shot him point blank. And there would have been some kind of residue
Right.
of you know, Daniel Faulkner's, you know, on Mumia, blood or skin, you know, DNA would have been on Mumia's clothing. So it just doesn't add up. The pictures don't show what is his name? What is his name? The so-called witness, the so-called eyewitness.
Schobert.
You're Robert Schobert, who had a conviction against him as well. And he had a tainted past. Like I said, he threw a Molotov cocktail in a schoolyard, and he was driving without a license at night. So with someone driving without a driver's license be parked behind, you know, a police car? No, that doesn't make it. Just doesn't make sense. The man had a sketchy past. The so-called Cynthia White prostitute said she saw something, and her friend said that she was nowhere on the scene.
Another point that's missing in the polo car pictures, Schobert cab isn't there.
Right.
That's right.
Another obvious eye. And no, but what I want to point out, how is it in 1995, 96, 99, we can have, I mean, we did millions for Mumia. And that was millions of people around the world. We had evidence then, but nothing like we have now. One thing that they said that they will take this case and wear it down with time, but we have not allowed it because we continue through programs like this and like the teaching in the college that, you know, you're constantly educating, bringing more people into the fold, and for those people who have forgot and you know, or have started to do some other things and don't remember, the entire West Coast was shut down 2 days. No cargo moved on them ships for 2 days, a day and a half. And you know, that is phenomenal in itself for Mumia, and that Mumia is a honorary citizen of Paris, France. And you know, the last person at the time that Mumia was made an honorary citizen was Pablo Picasso, who did you know, was an artist. And but you know, for this young Black brother from the projects, a Black journalist, and to be named an honorary citizen of, to have streets named after him, and to have colleges. I mean, in Brazil, everything shut down, and all the students walked out. Right here in Philadelphia was a student walkout. And another thing that's happening on December 9th, and our brother Mike Africa is hosting a press conference at the mayor's office and inviting all the news media in, because Janet Africa's daughter and other
Come on.
people was murdered on May 13th. They just
Come on.
saying they found the bones, the
That's right.
remains. So what Mike is doing, because see,
Come on.
everything done was criminal. 3 years ago or more, when they found Janine Africa babies, bones, and he was using them for displays in science projects, and the remains of the body, and sending them to Princeton and all for to teach lessons on these families, and and there was a big controversy when it happened with Janine's children, but it's like it popped in the newspaper and then it's gone. Mike is demanding, and we are demanding along with Mike, and all that the people that's responsible, and all for the it's a charge, for abuse of a corpse. That's criminal. And criminal for them to lie to the family members and said that they had buried these people. Janet is devastated to find out that her daughter remains is still there. And we know also that there are still more remains. We have not found out, and they say that they buried, some things, and we don't know what it is because you keep finding out. But anyway, Mike is hosting a press conference at 9:00 on December the 9th. Why December the 9th? And the reason why Mike is holding this, press conference is because Janet and the MOVE organization, and when they had this last where people was asking them, what do MOVE want, and MOVE want Mumia. We want Mumia. This is what Janet's demand was, and Janet was the one when Mike Africa was born in the prison cell in 1978, and Janet was the one who announced in court that he was born, and she also made sure as they went down the hallways when they had to turn Mike over to his grandmother, to officials first, and with the grandmother, and she was the one who made sure that every inmate in this scene, a healthy, strong, child that was born in such different conditions, and all that Debbie had went through, and with the house being torn down on top of them, thousands of rounds of ammunition shot, in on them, and that she brought forth this, amazing young baby that is known as Mike Africa Jr. today. She, brought him into this world, so he's. And Mumia covered this, and she wants, demanding that this government, you can't bring back none of the babies. You can't bring back none of the people. We don't want your freaking money. And our MOVE organization want Mumia. And we also, Mike, myself, and other people are demanding that the people who withheld, who used the body parts of MOVE people and all for a damn dollar, and be arrested for the crime of abuse to a corpse. And that's what that press conference is going to be about on the morning of December the 9th. And it's again something that, as well as the going to Krasner's office, having the teaching in the school, we're trying to raise awareness about what's happening to Mumia and the case by any means necessary.
Just for clarification, right? Like, just in case people just caught part of it, didn't really fully understand. You were like, they abused a corpse. Can you give us what, like, who's the
Corpses.
they?
Oh,
What the body parts,
Corpses.
the move members, corpses?
right.
What? Can you just? What happened? What is of move members? Their corpses have been.
On May 13th, 1985, on Mother's Day, the government of the United States, because it was the FBI, they had sent in, people from, oh gosh, can't bring up the name of it, but it was the entire government, and who are pawns. They, and we know, and in this battle that we're all involved in. The mayor, the president, all of them, they're pawns for big business and for the corporations and things who really run things. And all these things come as a result of the okaying of.
But what happened? Mother's Day in 1985.
They dropped a bomb on a row, a row of houses on 6221 Osage, and an attempt to kill every man, woman, and child in the MOVE organization. There have been problems dealing with our neighbors and stuff, and prior to that, because MOVE and was protesting about the locking up and the tearing down the house in 1978 with what is known as the MOVE 9, innocent people. On May 13th, that was their way of shutting, MOVE up completely. They killed 11 men, women, and children. They got a C4 explosive, which is a government explosive. The regular cops, they can't get that. That is government, FBI's, all of them. Killed 11 men, women, and children. And 2 survivors, which was Ramona Africa, they locked her up for the accusation of doing everything that they did. And I'm talking about
Incredible.
fire department, police department, the feds, the whole group of them, and burned down 61 row homes, left people homeless. And people's animals, their cats, their birds, their dogs, and whatever life that they had in their homes was burned to death. And like our children and our brothers and sisters was burned to death on May 13th. So the children, and as far as we know, the adults too. And but we have clear evidence that the Delisha and Tree, which was Congress's daughter, that they were definitely parts of, the bodies was used for experiments and was taken, across country and for people to examine the bones. And one of the people had actually taken the bones. She had described the bones as, juicy. They were still juicy.
These people are demonic.
And some of those bones were found. Are those some of the same ones that were found at University of Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Same place. Yes. Who swore that they turned over everything, and we know for a fact this still isn't all of it when you talk about just Alicia.
And they put them in the museum at the University of Pennsylvania. This is from the Philadelphia Inquirer, and they are when they were covering the MOVE bombings.
Oh my God!
Retrospectively, and they literally it is a they put the body parts in a museum.
And yes,
without permission. Without permission.
Yeah,
from their parents. I mean, that's grave robbing when you think about it.
And those were the bombs of children that were killed.
Yes.
They knew where the parents was at. Delisha is Janet and Delbert Africa's daughter. Is Delbert Africa's daughter.
Delbert, for everybody's benefit too,
died in prison.
August 78, Albert was the one that took that beating on national TV,
That's
like the
right.
soldier he was, right? And he died shortly after he was released, right?
Yeah.
But we got him out in
Uh,
time.
a
And Janet
couple,
got out in that wave, you know. Consuela, we lost Consuela
right?
in the aftermath of her finding out what happened to her child. You know, because
Yes.
that's how trauma works. Going through
It's,
our community, when our community gets violated like this. That
and
trauma of what happened to her child, how they handled that, took her out of here.
Janine Africa, which I think she was about 19 or maybe 20 when the August 8th confrontation happened. She might have been about 19. She lost her on May 13th. Phil Africa was murdered. Her husband, the baby name was Phil, and her husband name was Phil. He died inside the prison, and while she was in prison, and you know, it's some horrific things that has happened to move. And Mumia was the one who was covering it when they told all the media, "Do not cover this story."
Which is why he lost his. Which is why he was driving a cab on December 9th and before that to make up for the part-time job that he had as a broadcast journalist.
Yes.
So
yes.
it's a tawdry story, and unfortunately, you know, they don't seem to be, these people, they don't even seem to be what is the word, like they stand strong. They want Mike wants to purchase that house, that lot or whatever. And they, Mike told the mayor, I should be able to get that property for free, considering what happened to them. And he looked in the record and said, "Oh, well, let me get back to you, the mayor, not this one, but the one before this lady. Let me get back to you on that." And they told him, "No, you're going to have to purchase it." They have no heart. There's got to be another word for it, but just don't. They just don't respect, Black people's lives at whatsoever. We're like garbage to them. And the fact that Ramona went to prison behind the 1985 bombing. Excuse me, she didn't do anything.
And the thing was, they had a federal trial, and they used words like you could not use the word bomb, and you had they used the word the entering device, and they were found liable for murder.
Of course, come on.
He was found liable for murder, and the judge and what the jury came up with was that these people that was found liable for murder, they would have had to come in for 11 years every week and put up $11. This was their punishment for masterminding the horrific murder of men, women, and children. $11 for 11 years each week. The judge, people was outraged, inside I wanted to, but what the judge came back and did, he said this was cruel. These people had suffered enough. So he was going to take away the fact that they would have had to come in for 11 years every week and pay $11. So he took that away from them. Oh, and it's not the first time people interfered with it, because when Delbert Africa was beat on national TV, which Brother Zaid was pointing out to, when that trial happened, they picked a jury from outside of Philadelphia, brought them here. The Judge Kabaki, looked at that jury as the evidence was being presented. He said, I'm going to be the lightning bolt. This was his words. I'm going to be the lightning bolt. I'm going to discharge the jury. And I'm going to find the officials that was involved with this beating of Delbert Africa, the cops, and that they had suffered enough. And he ended the trial. Issue process pure bull. And all the way across the board, just like the election, just like the two-sided party is just plain bull. And you know, they keep saying you got the left side and the right side of the same bird. Yes, a demon bird, because a bird itself is not, you know, the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. But when they show the devil, they do show the devil with wings and horns. So the left side of that and the right side of that, yes, is the Democratic and the Republican Party. Not because I say so, but because history has proven it to be true. Because one thing for sure, Trump never should have been able to run for any kind of office. And he should have been locked up for treason when he went over to Russia, had meetings with Putin when he came out, then came here, invited Putin here. And you know, we don't know what they talked about. And but the Rosenbergs was murdered, Zacco and Vanzetti was murdered. And also I'm saying, you know, I'm not pushing murder on anybody because I'm anti-death penalty, even though, because see, one thing I know for sure, the cop that dropped the bomb on our family, he blew up in a damn helicopter. We didn't have nothing to do with that. The cop that dropped the bomb.
It's coming on the roofs.
That gave the orders for them to shoot in the back. His son was assassinated by some of his friends in the back of their home. We had nothing to do with it. What goes around comes around.
Absolutely.
Check the suit coming on the roofs.
They call me as an MFer. Well, honey, there's a whole lot of comment that's going to be happening, you know, around here. But I want to say real quick.
I just wanted to add something to what you were saying. Like you were saying that it was like the C4 that was dropped on the house, and how that it was a conspiracy. It wasn't just the police. Again, an attack from a headline from the Philadelphia Inquirer that looked at it is the mystery of the C4 explosive remains unsolved, right? And so no one seemed to know at that point, like how did the C4 get there, right? And you literally had a police department drop C4 on a house in a residential area, and nobody seems to know how it got there, right? And so,
somebody ordered it.
They had to give the order.
It was
right, and so
military.
And so what I want to say to the audience, right? Because the audience might not, like, they might hear you, they don't know necessarily history, and when they were like, what? It's a conspiracy. What do you mean by conspiracy, right? And it's like, look, man, like if you look just in regular newspapers, they're like, it's a mystery. If you look in regular newspapers that are covering, like the Philadelphia Inquirer, or at least the mainstream newspapers, they're like, yeah, the University of Pennsylvania has the bones of the children that were murdered, right? Like, I mean, it is so outrageous that we're like, why don't we talk about this more? Why don't more people know about this? And when people start talking about it, why? And especially when people are talking about like the Trump administration and all the stuff that was going down the pike, if we don't know what we did, then we have no idea what acts that we're going to commit, right? We don't know how easy it is for the government to get away with dropping a bomb on a residential house
and letting the fire burn, which there's a film documentary.
Right.
That was about maybe 7 years ago. People should look that up. Let the fire burn. It tells the story about what happened, you know, to move. And also, Mike Africa has a book, you know, told from, you know, the inside. You know, there were books written about move, but never one by those, you know, who actually, the experience being inside move. So people should look that book up, On a Move by Mike Africa Jr. It's on what do you call it? You know where to get it. Just get it. Get it. It got rave reviews even in the New York Times, the liberal, you know, so-called paper of record. So it's worth looking at it, because, you know, if we let this go, you know, they can repeat it. Look who we have, you know, the that's incoming.
This is
These
something,
people are, yeah, these people are demonic.
you know, that when Mayor Good selected his cabinet for Philadelphia, he selected Leo Brooks, who came from the Pentagon. You want to know how the C4 got there, the military explosive?
Mm.
Leo Brooks came in, and because of MOVE. Once that bombing was done, Leo Brooks left and went back to the Pentagon. And Leo Brooks' son was the commander of the bombings and things that went on in Afghanistan.
Mm.
And this picture here is far more deeper than what people think. What the hell is the general something and doing in Philadelphia as the city managing director? That was, he was brought in for MOVE. Once that maneuver was over, Leo Brooks was gone.
Interesting. Mm.
And it's interesting because, like, when people are looking at what happened with MOVE, we talk about what potentially can happen in the Trump administration. Mayor Wilson Good, who was the mayor of Philadelphia at the time, who she talked about, was a Democrat. He was Black.
That's right.
First
That's right.
And so,
mayor of Philadelphia.
right, he was the first Black mayor in Philadelphia.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so when we're looking at, like, just what it is we need to just analyze, what it is we need to remember, what it is we need to know, right? Is that the levels in which there has been contempt for our lives, it seems to be broad, widespread, and in a way that, like, even in our local, because it seems like, you know, in Philadelphia, it's Philly, right? Like, Philly's a very Black city. And how could this happen with a Black mayor in a Black city?
Brotherly love.
Right, in the city of brotherly love, and there not be the ramifications that we would think would happen, right? It all the time just astounds me, the levels in which this happens.
Yes, and what brought the family home was the pressure, the consistent pressure of the people, and Mike Africa going to another level of dealing with the mayor, and because they had named the street after Wilson Good, and the people rose up. Oh hell, we wasn't happy.
That's right.
And you know, we demonstrated. We was in front of his house just about every day. Nighttime, we was out there with candles. We was demonstrating. Then he came on the air and said that he will sit down with MOVE people and you know, discuss it. And you know, he had wrote a book one time, In Good Faith. Right. And in that he say he knew that MOVE was innocent, and he say that too, all the way up to the last when MOVE people was released from jail. Mike Africa worked and, you know, pulled the squad together to pull that particular part, you know, in. And it was one of the, you know, it was a very hard thing for him, because I went to some of those meetings to sit across from Wilson Good, and people will say, well, you know, it's not, you know, he wasn't the one, and they was just keep making excuses. He selected to be the mayor. He was the one who said, and I'm telling you, it tears me apart even to think of the sight of seeing him on the TV when they would say, you know, they found 3 more bodies, and he throw his hand up in the air and like somebody doing a baseball score. 3, they got 3 more, and then to stay on national TV that he did it and he would do it again the exact same way.
Exactly wow. What he said.
You know,
that's exactly what he said.
Ooh, and to be able to have to sit in a room with him, and you know, Mike, and you know, the children was, you know, some, you know, that we all, these were Mike's playmates. you know. And when you think of what all happened to him, and sitting there in order to do the work to bring your parents home, Mike made all those meetings. I can only make one, and I never forget when Wilson Good did this book. When he did the book In Good Faith, I went to an event from Dave Richardson, and when I went there, I looked.
That's Dave Richardson.
Dave Richardson was State Representative David P. Richardson. He was
Good
the
brother.
stood up for Mumia. And I mean, this brother did not bow down, back up, suck up, fear of life or death or any of that stuff. Stood up and pointed to the facts. He was at the courtroom. He was bringing in state representatives and senators in that courtroom. He was rallying people to stand up for the truth. And they all did until they killed Dave. And I say this government killed Dave because on the
Always suspicious about that heart attack. Absolutely. He was 46. Come on.
the night that they were supposed, the day that they were supposed to kill Mumia, that night, and because we beat the death warrant back through massive protests. But that night, Dave Richardson was out with some friends at a club. He got a little sick, and well, maybe not friends, and he got a little sick, went home. His mom had him rushed to the hospital. They said Dave had a massive heart attack on August the 17th. The day that Mumia was supposed to be executed. I'm saying, we dealing with some much heavier stuff than what people, really understand of what's going on here. The fear that the DA in Mumia's case crashed and fell, and is a real fear. And but when you take on that position, you got to take on that position, especially when you got he's a mayor that is supposed to be a progressive mayor. And
you mean DA?
Right. He did, DA, thank you, Gwen. He didn't always feel this way. It wasn't until a judge, a black judge by the name of Tucker, and all the years.
Republican black judge.
Yes.
Oh, the Constitution's incredible.
Right. That's important. He was the one that gave Mumia something that no one ever gave him in all those years he'd been on death row and off of death row and sick and damn near dying and stuff. This judge sat on Mumia's case for 2 years, and he came back with the stating that Mumia must have an appeal hearing. And if Mumia got a new hearing,
all the evidence.
You
were never able to get any evidence on the record until then.
He said, bring it all in. This is what this judge said. And then Maureen Faulkner and the FOP, they were so pissed that day. And y'all going in, which comes in court. I was in Philadelphia today. The FOP, we knew something was happening that day because look, they dug up some old retired behind. They wheeled these cops in wheelchairs. They was on walk. Was gunned down to the max. They was outside. They was, outside City Hall. They was on inside the judicial building, and and this was to intimidate this judge because the courtroom was for these monsters, these demons, and that was to intimidate the judge into doing what it is that they wanted him to do. And Maureen Faulkner, when the judge announced what it was, his decision, she howled, she screamed in there, and the judge asked her to please be quiet. Now this is Maureen Faulkner, this blonde-haired, brown-eyed or blue-eyed woman, and who has lied and said the Mumia supporters spit on her, lied and said that Mumia was in the courtroom the day that they brought her husband's shirt in, and he turned around and he smirked at her, and years for these people. None of this stuff ever happened because they found out Mumia had been thrown out the courtroom long before any of this stuff had happened. And if somebody had spit on this woman who was surrounded every day of that court trial by police in plain clothes and dress clothes and all, that if someone would have spit on her,
What do you mean?
clearly, where's the body?
We would have knocked their
They would
teeth
have
out their mouth.
They would have killed a black man, woman, child, whoever spit on her, or if it was a poor white who had spit on this woman, and or they would have been beat so damn bad you would have been all over the newspaper, just like what wasn't in the newspaper because the media was there, was the fact that Mumia, smirked at her when they brought the bloody shirt of Danny in. And, and my position is very clearly, and on this comes after, years and years of, being involved in this case and watching, and people say, you should, be talk real, it turns people off when you talk about Maureen Faulkner because she lost her husband. I don't give a damn if it turned people off. If they don't know what the circumstances is and to turn them off instead of turn them on and make them throw up their fists and say free Mumia, and it's just too damn bad because that woman was wicked as well too. Maureen Faulkner didn't give a damn about Officer Dan, not at all.
As a matter of fact, she's married to a police officer as we speak, and she lives in California.
Yeah,
so I mean. And the other witness, she wasn't, Veronica Jones, is a Jones, who knew Cynthia White. They were both, unfortunately, women of the night.
Sabo's court, Sabo had her arrested, but we still got it on the record.
Mm-hmm.
We have I know we're approaching the end of this section, right? Yeah. And we're way over time, but tell us tell us briefly what is going on what is the date going up and where will people gather? Where are people going to be going?
Sure, there's there's going to be a teach-in on Mumia's case and other political prisoners. It's not going to just be about Mumia because there are other political prisoners, Black Panthers, that are still behind the wall and seniors, just like Mumia. And most of them, the other ones are far more sicker, than Mumia is. And we need to get them out as well. I mean, Leonard Peltier is he's not doing very well. And Mumia wants him out as well. He's paying close attention to that case. And Mumia has, supported Leonard's bid for clemency. So, but on December 7th, for those people that are in Philadelphia, there will be a teach-in at the community college. You can just look up on our website for the details, freemumia.com. And Mumia is spelled Mumia, Mumia. And there will be a demonstration from 2 to 5 on December 9th because Mumia has been wrongfully incarcerated for 43 years.
Philadelphia City Hall.
At City Hall, and the authorities, and I know Krasner knows Mumia is innocent. I know he knows it. I don't know about the other officials so much, but I know Krasner knows damn well Mumia didn't kill that police officer because the new evidence that was just discovered 4 years ago plainly shows that the police cooked up the evidence to frame Mumia because he was a Black Panther and a radical journalist telling the truth about what Black people experienced under Rizzo and after Rizzo.
And on December the 9th at 9 a.m., there will be a press conference at the mayor's conference room dealing with Mumia and, the fact that, we're pushing to have the people responsible for keeping the remains of move people,
the children,
museum. And I'm going to say real happy birthday to Akua Hampton, Fred Hampton's mama, Chairman Fred Hampton's mama. And on December the 16th, please look up what's happening with the Uhuru, 3 court case. It's about reparations, and it's about them trying to lock up another freedom fighter. So with that, I'm signing
Pam is
off.
talking about the, Pam is referring to the sentencing hearing.
Right.
Three. Omala Yeshitela, Jesse Neville, and Penny Hess. And we had Penny and Jesse on. It was and we still trying to get O'Malley on, so they can tell her on. So O'Malley has been one of our long distance running struggles that goes back to the late '60s with SNCC.
And still they're trying to
still get cheap tickets. And on my tickets, I looked today, and they still have cheap tickets. And if you go cheap air tickets, and you can get cheap tickets like from 109 to 115, 120, and they go up. And each day they're going to go up more and more. So I advise people, give me a call, 267-760-7344, and I'll let you know about cheap tick. So I'm going to be, I know Zaire is going to be there. There's a lot of people from New York.
Going down.
Well, thank you.
Who.org.
And thank you so much.
And one more thing regarding Mumia. Check out his new book. He wrote a book, Beneath the Mountain, and you can hear Mumia on Mark Lamont Hill's podcast on YouTube on Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and visit prisonradio.org to hear Mumia's commentaries.
All right, thank you so much. And
thank you.
We'll have you back. We'll have you back very shortly.
Ask a ritual question, John. Before they go, real quick.
All right, so just real briefly, because we're way over time. Favorite hip hop artist, individual group. Zaid, you're laughing because you causing this. That's funny. All right, it's cool. I got you, Zaid. I got you. But who's your favorite hip hop artist, individual or group?
Okay, I would have to say, damn, CRS. Can't remember shit. Okay. Damn. Public Enemy, Immortal Technique, Dead Prez, Del P.
Mine would be Tupac Shakur.
Right on. All of that.
All right, thank you so much. And
on the move.
And we'll see you soon.
Take
care.
Take care.
Oh my goodness. Is Charles there? There you go.
Reporting to duty.
So we're gonna do a combination of guests. I know we have Amy Torres, we have Charles Barron.
Oh, she's there. Oh my goodness.
We are honored to have Charles Barron. We are honored to have you on. Again, I'm calling you Councilman Charles Barron.
Councilman and Assemblyman.
Councilman and Assemblyman Charles Barron, right? Like you will always be Councilman and Assemblyman Charles Barron, because you are probably the best legislator in the country when it comes to making sure you deal with the issue of gentrification. I remember having you on our show and you talking about that and breaking it down in ways that I had never heard, and honored to have you. I'd love for you to also be a part of the conversation we're having, because I know your perspective on this will run deep with Amy Torres and talking about what's like, the top agenda on the Trump administration. And every time I hear it, it sounds so surreal, right? Because I think that when I know that Amy will talk about it from what is planning to happen with private prisons, detention centers, the army possibly being massed and moved in American cities to almost like go door to door hunting for people, right? And to remove. And it sounds like science fiction. It doesn't sound real, but that might be happening real soon. And the thing that always strikes me is if they do that, if that type of militarization, that door-to-door thing is done, that prison architecture, that infrastructure is built up, then what else is it going to be used for? Who else is it going to be used for? It just seems very, very scary. You can introduce this section and we can get to our guests.
Well, let me go to Amy first. These segments ran over. Right?
It was your fault, Zay. It was your fault, Zay.
I'll take full responsibility for that. Right? That's how we get down. But Amy was relating something to me on the chat when I was trying to connect with her about another tie that she's aware of in connection with me. I want you to share that, Amy, and we'll come right to what's happening in Jersey in anticipation of the Trump mass deportation agenda.
Well, first, let me say it's such a pleasure to be on with the esteemed Charles Barron. Mr. Barron, you would have no idea who I am. I was just like a tiny baby advocate in Albany way back when you were still in office.
Oh my gosh! Why did you have to say tiny baby? Now you.
I was like a young 20-something, not knowing what I was doing, getting lost in all the stairwells. So
done good though. She done good. She raising hell in Jersey.
But the respect runs very, very deep. I think like having this conversation after a conversation about political prisoners is so apt. I want to definitely talk about what is happening with immigrant detention in New Jersey. But before that, I want to ask if y'all are familiar with something called the 100-mile border zone.
No.
Talk about it.
No.
This is a teaching platform.
I don't know anything about it.
So 1 in 3 Americans live within the 100-mile border zone. And the name says it all. Within 100 miles of the border, which includes, of course, the southern border, the northern border, any seaports, but also international airports, certain constitutional protections are suspended. You can be arrested by ICE or CBP, regardless of your immigration status.
Wait,
this
stop.
applies.
Hold on. Wait. Hold on. Back up. So, okay, we don't do conspiracy theories on the show, right? We don't do them.
Not a conspiracy
theories. We don't do them. So break this down for me. Like you just said something that's like for real? Like, is this how long has this loophole been?
If you're tuning in, if you're in the chat, Google 100-mile border zone. One of the first results you'll see is from ACLU. One of the second or third is from the Southern Poverty Law Center. The 100-mile border zone is a 100-mile buffer that spans the entire outline of the United States. And in this outline, ICE and CBP are given permission to suspend certain constitutional rights around search, interrogation, arrest. Within this 100-mile zone, citizens and non-citizens alike can be arrested and detained by ICE. We saw this in 2020 in Portland. Yeah, there we go. The 100-mile border zone. And we saw it when there were protests in 2020 for racial justice against police brutality because the international airport covered this area, this 100-mile buffer. ICE was able to arrest protesters. They were able to use surveillance that local and state PD did not have. That means facial recognition technology. That means tracking people down. And this 100-mile zone completely covers, you can see it. You can see the thick red line right on the screen. But what's important to note is that the entire state of New Jersey, every mile, every inch of the state of New Jersey is within that 100-mile border zone. So if you don't care about immigration, if you're not an immigrant yourself, if you don't have loved ones who are immigrants, maybe you agree with some of the things that have been said about immigration. Oh, look, I even got the stat wrong. It's not 1 in 3, it's every 2 of 3 Americans live within the 100-mile border zone. So even if you don't care about this issue, guess what? What's happening with immigration detention affects you. Because if you live in New Jersey, if you live in some of the most populous parts of New York, if you are 2 out of every 3 people, this is an issue that's going to affect you. Now, to connect this to political prisoners, we've seen this used before, as I mentioned. Protesters have been targets, have been, ICE has been deputized to be able to surveil people as long as they're within this zone, and certain types of stops and searches and interrogation and arrest are allowed within this 100-mile zone. This is not something new. This is not something proposed by Trump. This is something that exists today. But what I'm on here to talk about tonight is the incredible expansion of immigration detention in New Jersey. I know folks are tuning in from all over, but whether you're tuning in from Philadelphia or New York City, New Jersey sits right in the middle. And we have an international airport here that has a fixed-based operator, meaning someone who offers private hangars who contract with ICE Air, the major transport for transfers and deportation. So there are no immigration jails within New York City. The closest are in upstate New York. There used to be one out on Long Island. But New Jersey long has been a strategic target for immigration detention for a couple of reasons. Folks remember during the Muslim travel ban, people were showing up at terminals. They were protesting. During the 2018 summer of family separation, people were again showing up at airport gates to try and welcome children, try and reunite families, figure out where people were entering the foster care system. At Newark Liberty International Airport, that doesn't happen because ICE has a private hangar where they can just drive straight up onto the tarmac and deport people in the middle of the night, transfer them in the middle of the night, no or little notice to their attorneys or their loved ones. So when they're thinking about where's the best place to detain people, where would be the best place to transfer people to, they're not thinking about city. They're thinking about New Jersey because our airport is a strategic resource for them. Not to mention, no journalist times, no one from these major papers want to take the bridge or tunnel out to New Jersey. And a great example of that is in February 2020, plainclothes ICE officers tried to arrest a man in Brooklyn. It was during school drop-off hours. He was walking home. They weren't in uniform. They attempted to arrest him. And if you imagine plainclothes officers trying to arrest someone on the street, it looks like you're getting jumped, right?
Right.
So his brothers
Right.
rushed out of the house. Yeah, exactly. You see your loved one getting attacked, you run out the house and try to defend them. And in the midst of his brothers running out to support him and help him in the midst of what looks like him getting jumped, ICE officers shot one of the brothers in the face.
Wow.
And I know this feels like ancient times. This was right before the pandemic. Again, this was like January, February 2020. But if you could have seen the media circus outside of that hospital, every news outlet imaginable was there. Protest, vigils, overnight, 24/7, people were outside demanding justice because it was outrageous. Children are getting dropped off from school and ununiformed ICE officers are just pulling out guns and shooting people in the middle of the street and arresting them. So what did ICE do? They said, this media circus is way too much. We're going to detain this guy over in New Jersey in Hudson County Jail. And he was denied food, medical treatment, you name it. But none of those reporters from these big name newspapers felt like,
follow the story.
Wow.
Yeah.
They
So
didn't take the path.
I'm sure some of these papers probably have a stipend for an Uber or a Lyft, but they didn't even bother with that either. But I say this because this is what we know already exists. We know about this 100-mile border zone. We know that New Jersey is a strategic target for a whole lot of reasons, right? And what we know today is that ICE is looking to expand its detention capacity to levels that we haven't seen ever before. There was a procurement this summer to research what are the available facilities for immigration detention. In 2021, New Jersey passed this incredible landmark ban that positioned New Jersey as the first state to ban immigration detention. And as a result, 3 of the public-run county ICE jails, they shut down, and there was only 1 remaining jail that was operated by a for-profit prison corporation. Elizabeth Detention Center, run by CoreCivic in Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Right.
CoreCivic, and this is not exaggerating, this is not conspiracy, you can look at the filings, CoreCivic is the world's largest private prison corporation. When you think about international Black jails, when you think about these mega detention centers, these for-profit prisons, CoreCivic is one of them. They chose to look at New Jersey and challenge that detention ban that we passed in 2021 so that they could continue to house immigrants in detention in Elizabeth. But roll around now to 2024, in 2025, ICE, under the Biden administration, we still haven't gotten to what's to come in the Trump administration.
Right.
Under the Biden administration, ICE put out a request for proposals to say, hey, who are the private facilities who have empty beds, who have facilities that might be offline that want to go online again for immigration detention? And what we found out in the last 2 weeks or so through SEC filings, through FOIA litigation from the ACLU, what we found out is that major facilities in New Jersey have responded to the federal government to say, come on in. We've got facilities that range between 600 and 1,200 beds.
We've got Hall in Newark.
Yeah, Delaney Hall in Newark, New Jersey. Minimum 600 beds. At the last time it was operational, we know they were up to 1,200 beds. They also joined the litigation against our detention ban. Newark, for folks that are not from New Jersey that are tuning in, it is the state's largest and most diverse city. And you know, when we
And I was looking at CoreCivic's webpage, and CoreCivic, better the public good. Our mission, CoreCivic is committed to providing high quality, compassionate treatment to those in our care. Under CoreCivic Safety, we operate safe facilities that provide education and effective reentry programming to help individuals make positive changes so they can return to the community successfully. Then below it goes, what are detention services? CoreCivic partners with the U.S. Marshal Service and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, to provide safe environments where detainees can reside temporarily as they go through their legal due process. I mean, oh my gosh, this sounds horrible. It sounds...
The Orwellian spin on it is actually, like, if it wasn't so evil, it'd be masterful. Like, detention services, like, sounds like some white glove treatment center, which is not the case. And we know that's not the case. In New Jersey, we have plenty of examples. In early 2020, during the pandemic, an immigrant who was detained by CoreCivic's facility at Elizabeth filed a whistleblower claim about unsafe practices during the pandemic. A lot of people were getting sick. People were being denied medical care. He filed this federal whistleblower claim, and ICE expedited his deportation. ACLU was able to go to the courts and file a stay on his deportation case so that he could continue the whistleblower case. And what did ICE do? They deported him anyway and claimed it was an administrative error. So, you know, these services, these like dignified and safe and whatever you want to call it, it's spin. We know that these facilities are deadly places, and the immigration system doesn't allow for due process. You are not guaranteed legal representation if you're going through the immigration courts. So, you know, the criminal legal system has its own problems that are entrenched in part of its design. But imagine if that's the ceiling for justice and the immigration legal system exists below it.
I think this is part of where we want to bring Charles Barron on, the legendary legislator, activist, Charles Barron. And we, very related to the issue of immigration, is seeming, right, the reddening of America, right? Like the ways in which it's gotten a lot more conservative, or at least in terms of the voting, at least that's what it appears. In New York City, it seemed that like there was a reaction. A lot of the reaction, it is said, to have been caused by immigration and the issues that happened within New York City. The mayor, Eric Adams, famously complained to the Biden administration about immigration there, right? With what's happening, what in your perspective, what's happening in New York City, and how does that relate to what we just heard?
Well, first of all, this is not really a New York City problem. It's a national problem, number one. And number two, before we get into those particulars about immigration, we got to get into the imperialistic foreign policy. You know, you cannot solve immigration by getting more money from the feds. Can't solve it by passing domestic legislation. It first has to start with stopping the American empire from its imperialistic colonialism that it's doing across the world, in Nicaragua, in Venezuela, in Haiti, in all of those countries that are fleeing here, in Mexico, are suffering from the neo-colonial or the colonial and neo-colonial politics of imperialism that is perpetuated across the globe by America's foreign policy. So the first thing you got to get is AOC and Bernie Sanders, the fake socialist. You got to get them to push on a national level to stop supporting the Bidens and the Kamala Harrises and looking at this Republican versus Democratic fake fight that they have. Two parties on the same bird, different wings, but they make it appear as though there's a massive big difference. And I know everybody's going to say, of course it is. Let me tell you what Trump is going to do in 2025 and the Heritage Foundation. Well, you just heard Amy. All of the stuff Amy talked about had nothing to do with Trump. It was happening under the present administration, happened in the past. As a matter of fact, Thomas Holman was the ICE person under Obama. As a matter of fact, those young families and children in cages in 2014 came under Obama. And Obama deported more people than any president in the history of America. So all of those who want to stop Trump, so let's get Kamala in, you need to think twice. No more lesser to evil. Them days are over with. So when you look at the immigration challenge, it is us to challenge foreign policy. Having said that if we want to talk about domestic policies to deal with the immigration issues, like Eric Adams in New York City, once again, I say there's a lot of fake fights. You know what they do in government? They try to blame the other branch. The city will say, well, the state didn't give us the money that we were supposed to have. The state will say, well, we couldn't because the feds didn't give us the money that we're supposed to have. So these two duopoly colonial capitalist parties that are controlled by Wall Street, that are controlled by the real estate industry, that are controlled by rich, white, racist colonialists, create this fake fight like there's a money problem. Let's take New York. New York's governor, New York State, has a budget of $235 billion. Kathy Hochul also has $41 billion in a reserve fund that she can use for anything. Eric Adams has a $112 billion city budget and $8.2 billion in a reserve budget that can be used for anything. He lied and said that migration is costing us. I was there. I was in City Hall. I saw the numbers. I saw the budgets. Said it was going to cost us $12 billion. Over the next 3-4 years, he had to adjust that and brought it down to 8, then 6. When I knew that there was actually a surplus in the budget. And last year's budget, there was a surplus. Kathy Hochul was talking about a deficit in the state budget. When the dust cleared, it was a surplus. So it's really not a financial issue. It is an issue of greedy colonial capitalists and their neo-colonial black sycophant puppets in the Democratic Party. That's our greatest problem. Give you another example. Let's say, and they should fight it, it will cause some challenges, that they abolish the Department of Education under Trump, like they're threatening to do.
Right.
Well, when you look at the $36 to $38 billion education budget in New York State, the federal money for that is $8.9 billion. And I'm not saying they shouldn't fight for the federal money. They shouldn't claim it's going to devastate New York. But when you got $41 billion in an unmarked reserve budget, and the federal budget in education contribute $8.9 billion, you have plenty money to handle that. And Eric Adams, Mayor Cop Adams, the sycophant Mayor Cop Adams, you have in your budget $8 billion in reserve. The federal money for education is less than $2 billion. So they can make this fake fight how Trump is going to devastate things. And I understand. I wish people would stop calling me up and telling me how depressed they are, as though they were doing so well until Trump came. You know, they were living high on the hog, and here comes Trump. You know, most of the things we talk about, whether it's Cop City, that was happening before Trump. And if you look at both parties,
and it's happening in the Democratic city.
That's
you
right.
better believe it. You better believe it. They're
Right.
bringing Cop City to Queens in New York, and it's happening in Atlanta. All over the country, Cop City is happening. So I'm trying to encourage people to say, look, let's look at both these parties. To hell with the Democrats and the Republicans. And as we say in church, I hope the Lord sends the plague on both their houses. Because the bottom line is we have to look at local politics. The power for us to deal with the Democrats and the Republicans, the neoconservatives and the neoliberals, is on a local level. To deal with migration, immigration, a local level. Look at even Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was overturned in the Supreme Court, but it was codified in New York State, so it didn't matter what the Supreme Court did, because it was protected and codified through the New York State legislation. I was in the state assembly when they did it. So when you look at those things, and if you say, oh, the Democrats need to get in because they're better than the Republicans, well, let's take the minimum wage. The minimum wage, the federal minimum wage is $7.25.
Hasn't moved in years.
Say it again.
Hasn't moved in years.
All right.
Exactly. Under Barack Obama, a black president, the House
From Chicago.
was Democrat, the Senate was Democrat. They had the trifecta then. The Republicans have the trifecta now. The minimum wage was $7.25 then, and it's $7.25 now. AFRICOM, building military bases in Africa to exploit multinational, international corporation exploiting the natural resources of Africa. The paradox of Africa is that it's the richest continent on the planet with the poorest people. How the hell is that happen? How the hell does that happen? Imperialism, colonialism, neo-colonialism, black sycophant puppets of the West, ECOWAS. So when you look at stuff like that, we got to come very, very local. And this is why I think it's extremely important. And as a legislator, for us to look at local politics, I can honestly say that when I got in office in 2002 and stayed in for 21 years, I can honestly say in my beloved East New York, we stopped gentrification. We got 3 new $88 million schools built. We got a $20 million community center, hired young people to run it. We have new libraries. We were able to get a whole brand new housing. We stopped gentrification because, as I told you all about the AMI, the area median income, we have no gentrification in East New York. When I came into East New York, 65% of the folk were black and 20% were Latino. Now 67% are black and 2% are Latino. 90% of the community is still Black and brown. Look at Harlem. Look at Bedford-Stuyvesant. Look at Crown Heights. Look at Hakeem Jeffries' district, the 57th Assembly District in Brooklyn, Clinton Hill. It was 71% Black when Hakeem and Letitia James, the now U.S. State Attorney General, she was a city council member, it was 71% Black. By the time they left, that district is 32% Black and 38% white, and the rest is others. So we got to look at local politics. We got to empower Black, radical, authentic, bold, uncompromising revolutionaries to win local seats of power, particularly in the state legislatures. Because when we do all of this stuff, when we raise the issues, and oftentimes we major in the problem and minor in solutions. When we raise the issues and when we do a power analysis, it's critical to always do a power analysis. Who has the power to get you the resources or to get you the legislation to change the condition that you want changed? Once you do that power analysis, then it's on us to not just fight against the symptoms, but we have to get to the systemic structural issues of colonial capitalism. And that's what we did in my beloved East New York. We did all of that I mentioned. Barack Obama was president. George Bush was president during my time. Not one penny did we get from the federal government to achieve the things that we achieved in East New York. As a matter of fact, under Barack Obama, HUD cut the public housing budget, and NYCHA, the New York City Housing Authority, was cut under Obama, and he brought in the privatization of NYCHA. Obama and Biden brought that in while I was in office. So let's get it straight. Let's, as Martin Luther King used to say, I want to make the language clear tonight.
So what you're saying, like, to you broke it down, right? Like, you're like, as long as corporatists, as long as millionaires run both parties, people aren't going to really start talking about the strategies that are actually needed, right? Because you're even critical of like Bernie Sanders or Ocasio-Cortez, because you're saying they're not doing enough. Can you just break that down? Because for a lot of our listeners, and even for me, right? Like, I'm Bernie Sanders.
I'm not saying they're not doing enough. I'm saying they're siding with the capitalists. They're siding with Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats. They're siding with them. How does two radical, so-called radical socialists vote for a budget, pass a budget that's giving the Pentagon over $880 billion? Nancy Pelosi is the reason why Hakeem Jeffries is even in the position he's in, because she wanted to stop Barbara Lee from California, who she couldn't control. So she brought in this sycophant sellout. So I'm not saying they could be doing more. They're hypocrites. They're hypocrites. AOC came out and endorsed Biden without even going to her base of so-called progressive socialists. Endorsed him for the lame excuse that nobody should buy. We got to stop Trump. We got to stop Trump. The fear-mongering of Trump, the fear-mongering of Russia creates this kind of policies. And so you don't have to ask a single intelligent question. I ask you, you say, what about Bernie Sanders? And what about AOC? Look at their record. Who did they support? Joe Biden. Look at their record. You want to find out where elected officials stand? Find out how they vote on the budget. The budget. And in New York, find out how they vote on development projects. Remember I said do a power analysis? When you know that the City Council of New York has 51 members, the majority are women and the majority are so-called people of color, Black, Latino, and Asian, and you have a $112 billion budget that the mayor cannot pass. The mayor can only present the budget to us, right? and the speaker has one vote on the budget, how the hell is that power? If you got one vote on a budget and you have a mayor who has no votes on the budget, and then there's 50 city council members that have to pass the budget, and in New York City, if they don't like what the mayor is presenting, they actually can present their own budget and pass it,
Wow.
and get 2/3 of the city council, which is about 30 some odd members, to agree with it, so that even if the mayor has a veto to overturn any bill or any budget, we can override his veto with 2/3 of the city council. Now that's power. So you tell me, if we have that kind of power and we got all these socialists, all these blacks, all these Latinos, all these Asians, all these people talking all of the stuff in the city council, then I ask you, why is it that out of a $112 billion budget, they let this mayor give some piecemeal, some insignificant small portions of money, not to deal with poverty, not to really deal with unemployment, not to deal with health care delivery for poor people, not to deal with housing. They passed the city of yes. That was the city of no. You know what the city of yes did in New York? It gave the real estate industry more power over the city council. Because now,
Wow.
let's take this. How stupid could you get? Now, if you have a R6 zone where the buildings can only go up 6 stories, and if you want to go up 8, 10, 12, 15, 30, you have to come before the city council. It has to come before the city council. So that's a vote that's coming up. The city of yes is coming up December 5th. They're going to vote for it because I've been in the city council. Once a bill is voted out of committee and the speaker says it can hit the floor, that means she called up everybody with her staff and counted the votes. They have the votes on that. So now this city of yes will give the developer the right to go up 14 stories, 30 stories without coming to the city council. That's called as of right. See, right now, if someone came into my beloved East New York
so they don't have to even zone. They don't have to go through the city council to zone for those buildings.
Yes, they're rezoning. He's changing the zoning laws. You remember that white architect, Robert Moses? He rezoned New York City. That's how New York City got split into, Black and Latino communities and white communities up here. And he rezoned it. He got elected officials to rezone. So listen, Jonathan, if you lived in a community where the R6 that on your block, no one can go above 6 stories. That's the zoning law. And then some developer comes in and says, Jonathan, we want to go up 14 stories. We know that you're the city council member. Could you help us get this past the zoning committee, the land use committee, and the city council? And you'll say, well, it all depends. Is the housing going to be affordable as I define affordability? So you go through the negotiation. Well, now, if Eric Adams gets this city of yes passed, they can go up 14 stories as of right. So if the developer only wanted to do 6 stories, I have no power over that. He can do that or she can do that as of right. But if they want to go up higher, and if they want economic, commercial above the ground floor, that's another thing. Now with the city of yes, commercial enterprises can go up to the 3rd floor, 4th floor. You can have a smoke shop on top of your apartment because they can go up instead of the way it's zoned now. You have to stay on the main floor, the 1st floor. You can't do commercial above. There's so much in this city of yes that is really a city of no, and it's a developer-friendly policy.
I want to come back to that. I want to bring Amy back on. I know that I know that the segment that you're in was scheduled for much earlier, but can you give us tell us what it is that is going on next, right? Like, what is the organizing principle that's going on for what's inevitably going to happen? And again, we're going to come back to Councilman Barron for that, but on the specific question of the mass deportations that involve the army that will do millions, seems like it's on a different level than stuff that's been done before. It just seems the way they're talking about it, the way they're talking about employing the military, utilizing these existing laws that existed under, like, probably back, might have even started before 9/11, right? Like, but these laws that have been in existence through Republican and Democratic administrations and being used. What is next? What do we have to look forward to?
Yeah, I want to call in. There was a comment in the chat about this all being interconnected, right? We're talking about City of Yes with these like massive potential development happening over existing buildings. Like, this is just the first stop in eroding some of the very few tenant protections that we already have, right? Imagine, all of the work that's going to go into electrical lines, heating, water, and all of these things. Right now, you have a right where your landlord has to provide heat at a certain temperature. Like, City of Yes is just the first and very devastating, but first in one of the many things to come. And when we talk about the interest of private development, when we talk about real estate and we talk about like private prison corporations, these things are like very closely connected with each other, because where real estate developers don't want to go, private prison corporations definitely want to go.
That's right.
Right? Where property values are eroding and real no longer there, that's a perfect place to put a new incinerator, right? We see this in Newark. That's a perfect place to put a new private prison, because no one gives a shit. Sorry, no one cares about property values anymore, right? So these are all absolutely interconnected. In terms of where things go next, again, all of this has already happened. We didn't even talk about what may be to come in the Trump administration. There's a virtual call coming next week, Tuesday, December 3rd at 5 o'clock. It's going to be interpreted in Spanish and in Arabic, and it will be provided in English. And we're going to forecast like what's to come in the first 100 days of the Trump administration, and what can we do now between December and January 20th, right? We still have time. And because all politics are local, and because you should be involved in local politics, you should know what the available levers are to fight for your community. I think it's really important to recognize that like these, and we haven't named it yet, but in these conversations around housing, like we're talking about segregation, and immigration itself has become a segregated issue where people hear immigration and they think Latino. But look at how some, not all, I reject the blame on Latino voters and the blame on Black voters over this election cycle, because it was white voters that delivered the win for Trump.
That's right.
It always has been. And so sure, you can peel off a percentage here or there, but it's really white voters that are owed the blame. But that being said, we've segregated the issues. People hear immigration, and because of how we've talked about it over decades, they only think it affects Latinos. Where are these detention centers being proposed in New Jersey? Newark, New Jersey, Trenton, New Jersey. Those are Black cities. When President Trump talked about immigration in the national debate, he named Haitian immigrants eating cats and dogs. They have an anti-Black agenda. They have an anti-immigrant agenda. And so long as we continue to think, or some people continue to think, that immigration is only a Latino issue, we're not going to be able to defend our communities. So I just want to say that there. And I think there's a direct correlation between the profit over mass incarceration when President Biden signed this EO saying we're no longer going to rely on private prison corporations for federal jails. They didn't say anything about immigration. And at that time, we were already seeing a rise in Haitian asylum seekers. We were already seeing a rise in refugees and asylum seekers from West Africa, right? So anyway, all of that's to say, in terms of next steps, there's a lot that can be done. New Jersey is one of only 2 states that has a governor race next year. Some of the cities that we've talked about, those mayors are running for governor. And when we talk about power analysis, it's not necessarily about bringing those people onto your side. It's about scaring them into position.
Right on.
If they're seeking higher office, you don't have to convince them of everything. You don't have to make them believe what you believe. You just have to convince them to act right because you're watching. And they want something bigger, and you're holding that hostage until they do what it is you want them to do. So there's a mass call next Tuesday. I can drop it in the chat. It's bit.ly/NJ Mass Call. NJ Mass Call is in all caps. And then I also want to plug, if you live in the city of Newark, we have this amazing program, Newark Documenters. You can get trained and paid to document public meetings. So let's say the planning board is meeting because they want to rezone a certain area for whatever development. You can get trained to comb through the directories of when these public meetings are happened, how to report on them, and how to pitch those stories. Because all politics might be local, but local journalism is dying, if not dead already. So joining the Documenters program is a great opportunity to get your feet wet, pitch your own stories, use platforms that are non-traditional media platforms, social media, you name it, whatever it is. These public meetings are for the public, but almost none of us have time to go to them, right? So being able to report on them and again, be that watchful eye adds that scrutiny that might not bring them onto your side, but is going to scare them into acting the right way. Maybe not always.
Let me just say this. Let me say this to that. When you say scare them, that's not power. That's influence. We got to make the distinction. That's not a power analysis. We got to make the distinction between influence and actual power. And this is why I say all of our movements should be running authentic radicals, revolutionaries for elected office. As you're doing your demonstrations, as we doing our conferences, as we writing our books, as we making sure we have town halls, as we have massive demonstrations. Can you imagine if the Black Lives Matter movement and then the Occupy Wall Street movement would have gone beyond mobilization and went into organizing for power, that kind of massive influence that we're having, not just across the city and states, across the world. They should have come out of that movement because it lacked ideology, it lacked vision, and it lacked a plan for power. See, I tried, Amy, my best to get the people locally to do the right thing. And after they wouldn't do that, then I called them names. You sellout, Uncle Tom, HMI. I did all of that. That didn't work. So, Amy, we took him out. That worked when we took him out. So if we have movements across the country that's going to look at some city council seats you could win with 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 votes. Look at Newark. What do y'all have? 9 city council members?
That's right. That's right.
9, right?
Right.
And what, 5 Blacks, 4 Latinos, or whatever. And so even if Ras Baraka runs for governor, for him to run and win governor, that's my man, but he ain't gonna be all ours. To win governor, even to win mayor, sometimes things happen that they may not want to have to do. This is why I never went beyond city council and state assembly, because I knew I would not cooperate beyond that. But if we can get the city council seats, because Ras Baraka could have moved even more had he had more control over the city council. The same thing with our brother from Mississippi, Antoine Lumumba.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he has
right now too, by the way.
They're attacking him on corruption and all of that. But I'm saying, Amy, it's got to be about power. The only reason why we were able to get stuff done, because, you know, in the city council, they have a thing called member deference. So if a you're familiar with that, right, Amy? If a project comes into the zoning committee, LU 347 in East New York, they're going to call me up. Barron, you want that? No, sir. That project is dead without a demonstration, without a press conference. It's dead. Or I'll tell them we're in the process of negotiations. Don't approve it yet. 7 members of a committee. And even when the mayor and the speaker tries to influence them, y'all don't listen to Barron. We need that for the city. I was able to convince them. That's where the influence comes in, Amy. I was able to convince them.
Yeah,
to
I mean, I
with me.
appreciate this reframe, and I take it to heart. And your note about like influencing politicians is not power itself is taken to heart. And as you were speaking, I was thinking to myself, I know this, right? Because I see how they've threatened other forms of people who are building dual power outside the system, outside the electoral system. We've seen Trump and Elon Musk talk about weaponizing the IRS. Congress just passed HR 9495.
We talked about it before we got on. That's right.
Exactly, to rescind the nonprofit status of 501c3s who are doing political work, right? And let's be clear, nonprofits are not going to save the system either. Nonprofits are not going to save our communities. So what do? They're going after mutual aid groups too. And we saw this in Atlanta. We saw this with Cop City, right? Where they're landing these crazy financial charges against activists who are running these mutual aid GoFundMes, right? So they know what power is. Yes, we can talk about influencing elected officials. Yes, there is, at the end of the day, someone whose ink needs to sign the bill, right? Yes, that's the system we live in. And in as much as we're creating these other systems through NGOs, through nonprofits, through community-based organizations, through mutual aid networks, the folks in charge know that that's just as powerful, right? And that's why they're landing some of the proposals that they are, which is really scary. Again, it's this Congress that passed that bill last week, HR 9495.
And what I think really, in what you're saying in terms of that model of activists actually running, right? Like big ups to Ras Baraka as the mayor of Newark, who started off as a community activist, who started off with the nonviolent, with the
Black Near Force
and Black Near Force, and also the anti-violence
Violence Coalition.
Right. And so you have like a series of activists who, one of the stories he always tells us is we were marching to City Hall, and we kept marching to City Hall. Well, we needed to go and take over City Hall, but you have to convince people of your ideas. And I think that becomes one of the most valuable things in terms of you are a radical, but very practical, and was able to get a lot of things done in Newark, right? Whether it be removing lead lines that hadn't even been done in Flint, model for the rest of the country, ends up going up the line, right? From local government to state government to even federal government. Some of the things that got passed with the infrastructure bill actually were duplicating those programs, right? So they gave billions of dollars to remove lead lines all over the country based on what was done in Newark, right? So you're gonna have a lot of detractors, you're gonna have a lot of, but I think that when you're talking about understanding power and understanding how can you use the local, state, federal government to be able to do that and weld it from a bottom-up grassroots level. I mean, I think they're going to be writing books about what Ras did with the violence prevention, lowering crime rates to rates that have been like 50-year lows, but then getting those programs modeled on a state and a federal level, having those as models throughout the country. I think that those are things that when you're talking about welding power of things that work, I think that's something that's going to have to be studied, right? Like at a certain point in terms of how do you make government actually work for you as people on these definite issues? I think that putting that out there in terms of, I think that becomes part of that model.
But Jonathan, I just want to caution you and others that capitalism is so wealthy. A mayor's office is so wealthy. a governor's office is so wealthy and the state legislatures have control over wealth, they could concede some things to make you think you're making progress. They can concede a lot of things to make. Eric Adams can get on this show. So I hear what you're saying, Charles. And this guy is the worst mayor since Rudolph Giuliani. But he can get on this show and say, do you know I gave $1.2 billion for affordable housing? And do you know I have and supported some legislation that did A, B, C, D? There's no politician that does nothing. You know, when we say someone, he ain't doing nothing, that's just not true. I tell people, don't even fix your mouth to say that. Give me a case in point, every city council member in New York City gets $5 million for capital projects. Another 500,000 to give out to programs in your district, and 400,000 to hire staff. So you can never say a politician is doing nothing. As a matter of fact, America is so filthy rich that they can always, capitalism has plenty money to concede. At some point, they'll give you a $15 minimum wage. Joe Biden gave $2 billion to the farmers, black farmers, when he was trying to get the vote. All of a sudden, he came up with $2 billion. You know, this is a $6-7 trillion national budget, but he found $2 billion. Eric is going to come up with a whole lot of things he did. And Ras, and I'm not putting Ras and Eric in the same boat at all, right? Because they're very different. I'm just saying, I want to caution all of us that when we promote these things that these governors and mayors, particularly the executive branch and the city councils in the state that they do, see how much they didn't do, see how much they could have done, and see how much they actually sided with Wall Street, with real estate, with the rich, didn't want to tax. If you have the power to tax the rich like the state legislature does, me and Carl Hastie is the majority, the leader of the state assembly, the speaker of the state assembly. I said, Carl, why don't you and Andrea Stewart-Cousin, another black woman, head of the Senate, why don't we get together and come up with a $15 to $20 billion proactive tax the rich budget that can give us a surplus every year for the next 10 years. We fought, we screamed and hollered. We showed him how you can do a peer-to-tier tax, on the wealthy's rich million and billion-dollar homes in the States. You can do a stock transfer tax. Do you know in New York City, they have a stock transfer tax? They get about 14 to 16 billion every year from transferring stocks at 5 and 10 cents. And if we took that tax and brought it to the state, we would have a surplus every year. We can take care of immigration and everything else, getting people out of homelessness. You know what they do? They rebate the whole 15 billion back to Wall Street. So my wife, who was in the state assembly, she joined one of her colleagues on the bill and said, how about just let us keep 50% of it? And you can rebate $7 billion to them and keep $7 billion. They rebate the entire 15 billion back, talking about they'll leave New York if we tax them. Yeah, right. That's not going to happen. So I'm just saying, we need more education on budgets, on the power of the Senate, the power of the Assembly, the power of the City Council, and the power of the executive branch. Like Barack Obama, he could have called, and Biden could have called, him and Kamala, a presidential commission on reparations. They didn't even have to go through. They didn't even have to go through the Congress.
Right.
Because they have executive powers. The mayor has executive powers. The governor has executive powers. So if you really study the whole thing, you'll see that most of them are not going to take on the real estate industry and not going to take on Wall Street because they're more into their personal ambition rugged individualism, and vulgar pragmatism to reach the heights that the colonial capitalists will gladly have them reach, as long as they don't talk radical rearrangement of the economic system that Dr. Martin Luther King talked about in his latter years.
So they are not. No. Great food for thought, man.
Yeah.
No, great food for thought, right? Like, because part of the question is, should billionaires even exist, right? And there's a clear answer to that, right? Right. And who's going to be talking about that anytime soon? And is that really is the bottom line of what you're talking about, right, Councilman?
Well, you know what I'm talking about, that being a realist, that they are going to exist. Make them pay. Since they are going to exist, why wouldn't you have a wealth tax in Jersey and in New York and say, okay, we can't stop you from existing right now because that's revolution, which is what I support, and it starts from the bottom up. But in the meantime, we can use reforms as a tactic to make revolution, to make radical systemic change, and not fall for the symbolism over substance or personalities over policies. So I'm saying that you got billionaires in Jersey, we got a state legislature, make them pay. Do you know Madison Square Garden, the Knicks place, they pay no taxes, none.
Wow.
Zero. We had a bill going for zero. Oh, if we do that, they'll leave. No, they're not. If we tax the corporations too much, they're already overtaxed. They'll leave. No, they're not. The stock market, if we collect the stock transfer tax, they'll leave. No, they're not. Let's tax them and find out.
Right.
And even if they leave, it's okay, right? Like in New Jersey, we kicked out Amazon because we know Amazon's existing footprint in New Jersey is killing workers. Workers are dying from high temperatures in their workplaces. Workers are dying because of their lack of. So if that little portion of their profit makes them leave, great, right? Because they're part of a deadly industry. So I have to leave, but I wanted to this note
we
about.
all got to wrap up. We all got to wrap up.
True.
Yeah, I just I'll say this, and I don't want to close it out because I'm not good at closing things out. But I think this like attention to how numbers get spinned is really important, because politicians are going to come to you and they're going to say XXX million, and you're going to think, oh my God, million. But then you see the whole piece of the pie, and it's exactly as you said, Mr. Barron, it's in the trillions, right?
Yes.
That millions doesn't look so great anymore. And
That's
to
right.
give you another example, let's think about where we are today on the immigration conversation. President Biden took office in 2021. The Senate race in Georgia, the runoff hadn't yet been called. He pledged on the campaign trail pathways to citizenship, ending for-profit immigration detention centers.
Yeah.
And then it was March 2021 that Governor Abbott launched Operation Lone Star. Operation Lone Star litigated in the courts, lots of things holding it up. Pieces of it went through, pieces of it didn't. But that doggedness to go after the issue with the most cruelest intent and giving airtime to the most dehumanizing language completely changed how we are talking about immigration today in 2024. Greg Abbott didn't need a whole lot of time, right? He waited 2 months into the administration to say, you know what, I'm taking control of the conversation, and maybe I'll change what happens by 2024 when Joe Biden, and who could have foreseen, but is running for re-election. So now is our time. Are we prepared for January 20th to take control of the conversation? Are we prepared in the early days of those 100 days of the Trump administration to take reins of the conversation? Because I'll tell you what, Greg Abbott started that in 2021. And by 2022, Mayor Eric Adams, who was billed as the new darling of the Democratic Party, was saying that migration was a threat to the very existence of New York City.
That's right.
You cannot tell me
it's immigration city in the country.
You cannot tell me that 250,000 at top estimates, it's 300,000, low estimates in the low 220s. 220,000 immigrants are hurting your city in 2024. Ellis Island is its peak of operations was admitting over 10,000 people a day in 1907. You're going to tell me that your city is worse off in 2024 than it was in 1907? That's a condemnation of your policies today. It's not a condemnation of the folks that are coming here just as they've always come here at much higher rates, at much higher volumes. It's a condemnation of the policies that we have today. And that's how this housing and real estate, because in New York, we're talking about these shelters that are getting protested, churn to like kick and evict people out of their shelters before they even are able to get their work authorization. This is all part of the same thing, so that you get bused from the southern border to New York City, you get evicted from your shelter, and you get detained in Newark, New Jersey. It is all part of the same process because they're thinking ahead in ways that we aren't always doing because we're so on the ground in the firefighting.
Let me tell you something else that Amy, we got to really be careful of this around immigration. There are poor people, Black people, Latino people in shelters already in our cities. Right. So when I say to my beloved East New York, hey, come on now, we got to be cool with the immigrants because they're us. You know, they're Haitian, they're Caribbean, they're from Africa, they're from Mexico, they're from Nicaragua. That's our people. What do you mean those folk? That's us. They say, yeah, Charles, but they're giving them vouchers. They're giving them this, they're giving them that. I've been in the shelter for 10 years and they ain't giving me nothing. So now we got to make sure, and this is why they had some shelters they wanted to build in East New York, and I don't have no power to stop that. They do have a fair share policy that you have to have a fair share. You can't oversaturate a single community with shelters. So you can't build 14 shelters in East New York and Brownsville and Harlem and none in a white and Asian sections in Brooklyn. Bensonhurst. You can't say Bensonhurst has no shelters, and yet our communities have 14. There's a fair share clause. So when people see that, then they say, well, wait a minute, if you need more shelters for immigrants, I tell you, and I told the mayor, this is how you can solve it. We have people that have been in shelters for decades. Anybody that's getting subsidies, free money from the government to build housing, require them to have 20-30% of it for the unhoused in shelters. And then when those shelters clear out, then you can use those as temporary housing for those who are coming in and get them out. So you'll have a nice cycle of getting people out. You can't say you're going to build 200,000-300,000 units of housing. Well, a third of that, I think, 100,000 should be for those who are unhoused in shelters, and they should get the same free money. And when we get free money from the government, it's welfare. When they get it, it's something cute, subsidies. Well, either we all on subsidies or we all on welfare. So if you would give,
and when it's the richest incentives, right?
That's right. That's right. If you can give them subsidies, then let's get our people out of the shelters, get them into permanent housing. Do you know, Jonathan and Zaid, they can get $3,000 a month for emergency housing in a room, as opposed to building an affordable apartment and pay $1,500 a month. They get more for emergency shelters than they do for permanent housing.
And that's an old form.
That's
right.
That's the stuff we can change.
Backwards. Money going
and that's the
up
stuff
and
that would
out
help
instead of money
hotel people, but not help people themselves. Wow.
But it's also not. It's not about the person in the room. It's about the question of why isn't there affordable housing?
I know that we're way over.
Sorry, I don't want to.
I know we're way over time on this. All right, cool. So we're gonna ask our ritual question, and then before we end the program.
Tupac, dead prez. Tupac, dead prez, and I know this is an old group. Arrested Development.
Okay. All right. And Amy, who is your favorite hip hop artist individual?
All right, so I got to plug, because a lot of people don't know, there's a lot of Filipino Americans in hip hop and rap. Sweetie, her, but there's this great girl that I love, Ruby Ibarra. She's Filipino American. She was born in the Philippines, moved to the Bay Area, grew up on West Coast rap, and then she started a record label for like emerging Filipino American artists. And I really like her. She's awesome. But yeah, always got to plug the Philam connection when I can.
All right. Well, thank you. Much appreciated. We'd like to thank all of our guests who came on today. We had a packed show. Thank Congresswoman LaMonica McIver for coming on, telling us about what our first days as a congresswoman were. Thank you also for thank Orange Mayor Dwayne Warren and talking about the governor's race and his support for Baraka. Thank you much to Pam Africa and Gabriel Bryant talking about the anniversary for Mumia and that incredible segment that gave us so much history as well. And also thank you to Amy Torres and the legendary Councilman, Assemblyman Charles Barron, who we are always honored to have on. We learn so much from you every time you come on. I'm still talking about when you talked about what you did in your own community to prevent gentrification. I think that should be a clinic. They should write a book on that because I think that is that is just not talked about enough in terms of how to use government and how to use. Right. Is it not elevated enough? Well, like it has to be elevated because it's one of I think it is a national success story. It is also a success story of how to be an effective politician for your community and the importance of local politics and the power, right, that local politicians and local people have to keep their communities the way that they want their communities to be. Right. So thank you for coming on again.
Thank you. And I want to invite both of you to come out to East New York. Come on now. I want to give you a tour of what we did so you can see the building yourself. You can see the parks, the libraries. It's going to blow your mind. Talking about it is one thing. Seeing it is another thing. So come on, so y'all hook up. Come on out. Let me give you the tour.
Okay. I mean, at some point, we might actually just have to do a show from out there. And that would be great as well, right? So we can talk about putting that together. Absolutely. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Right. Bye. And until next week, or actually until a couple of weeks from now, good night and see you soon.
Lights are going up, snow is falling down. There's a feeling of goodwill around town. It could only mean one thing. McRib is here. People throwing parties, ugly sweaters everywhere. Stocking. Hung up by the chimney with care. It could only mean one thing. McRib.
Yesterday, my publicist hit me.